thank you all for coming tonight. Let's start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to public comment on matters that are not on the agenda already. And if you do have comments, if you could limit them to about 2 minutes, that would be greatly appreciated. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to say a few comments?
I have a comment, but I want to make sure I say it in the right place. I have questions and comments about the new nuisance ordinance. Should I wait until that's about to be read?
Yep. Thank you for asking. Michael?
I think the city does a nice job in the park. It's well lighted up, excellent job. So I said we had a beautiful park, which is being used year-round, but they've done a very nice job. The lights colored this year. So I say my hand goes out to the city of St. Albans to do such a nice job.
Thank you.
I'm not criticizing them, I'm saying good.
Thank you, Mike. I would pass along that good work to Marty, and Marty, was it first response that did all the lights?
Yes.
So first response labor, I think it goes by. I can't imagine how many hours were put into that. They did a wonderful job. It seems like they do more and more trees every year. So Michael, thank you for that, and thank you to first response for their work on that as well. Anyone else have any public comments? Okay, hearing none, we will have Mr. Bill Kimball come up to talk about the Maple Run Unified School District and specifically talk about the budget, which is a hot topic these days, William. So.
Oh, it always is. Tim, how much time? I can make this 5 minutes, I can make it 15, I can make it a long time.
I think Dom gave you 1 minute on the I got 15 to 20 minutes.
The longer you're on the wood, the more you're on the fire, my friend.
Oh, that's probably true. That's probably true. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. I'll just use the keys here.
You might have to click on the screen again.
Oh, I might have to click on the screen. Oh, really?
Chip, can we back? There was no one on Zoom that wanted a comment that you saw, Chip?
I didn't see.
Okay.
All right, so I gotta put on my glasses. Let's see what this
So I think the arrows will work now.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Got them. All right. So first of all, thank you very much, Council, for letting me come and speak to you. One of the things that the Maple Run Board has been trying to do since at least the end of October is go out and have input sessions into our budget building process. We're a little bit further along since we started these input sessions because we gave our first draft of the budget at our last meeting last Wednesday. And I've added a couple slides to this, and so I'm going to go through a couple things pretty quickly. And this is a presentation that I've been using for the past month on this. So let me see. Okay, great. We all know the headlines that were in the news around Vermont. About a third of the school budgets last year didn't pass. So we're really trying to seek some input from what people's hopes and dreams are around Vermont's budget and for Maple Run's school district budget. One of the contexts I think you're all aware of, it's a statewide funding system, so I'm going to give you some state input onto this, but then there's also local adjustments that happen with that as well. And so couple of things I want to take a look at with Vermont's education system. If you take a look at this slide, if you look at the table to the left, you'll see that Vermont, if you look at across the nation right now, the national average of number of staff per students, a number of pupils per staff member in the nation is about 7.5 pupils for every staff member. If you took all the states in the District of Columbia, Vermont ranks the lowest at 4.4 staff members per pupils per staff member. We're the lowest ranking in the nation. And the graph that is on, and that comes from actually out of Montpelier. There was a study done in 2019 by the Joint Fiscal Office. It's updated every year by the National Center for Education Statistics. If you look at the graph on the right, and this is a great nonpartisan that looks at funding of public education around the nation, it's called Edunomics. The red line represents the number of employees in Vermont from 2017 to 2023. The national data is about 1.5 to 2 years behind what we have here at a district. You can see there's been about 1,000, increase of about 1,000 employees across the state of Vermont in education. At the same time, there's been a decrease of about 5,000 students in Vermont. And so that starts to affect our funding. And so how do you kind of keep that right-hand graph in your mind? So we're going to look at Maple Runs. What's it look like for Maple Run during that same time period? The other thing is, how does our statewide funding system happen? And I'd like to thank our new interim secretary. She has been using a template like this, but there's 4 big ways that local tax rates get changed. And there are 122 districts in Vermont that create budgets but we are statewide funding system. So imagine there's only 3. And we're District B, that center district with $15 million. We don't increase our budget from one year to the next. If we have District A that increases their budget by $500,000, and District C decreases their budget by $250,000, the state has to collect the budgets that were there from the previous year, the $45 million, plus another $250,000. So taxes have to go up in all 3 districts to raise that increase of $250,000. Now I made a real simplified version of this. So if spending goes up in the state taxes have to go up in every other district. And there are some proportionality to this. I'm trying to make it not as complex as Vermont's is, but the state still has to raise that money across all the districts in the state. The second way that happens, and there's been some new press in this the past week, is we're paying for things that are non-pre-K-12 instruction out of the Vermont Ed budget. You might ask what an example of that is. PCB remediation, universal school lunches, teachers' retirement is now in the Ed fund. It was in the general fund. That was about $39 million put into the Ed fund. Dual enrollments, we're paying for college tuition for kids. So there are things that are being paid out of the Ed fund that weren't pre-K-12 enrollment. I'm not valuing whether they're good or bad, we want them. We're just now using property taxes to pay for them, where in the past they might have been paid for somewhere else. The last 2 ways taxes change, and this is relative, these last 2, is the change in the property value. And we've seen that a lot here in the city. The CLA has gone down really quickly. And so the increase in property value has had an effect of increasing the taxes faster. And the other one is if we lose students, it'll have an inverse. If we lose students, we'll increase taxes. If we gain students relative to the rest of Vermont, we'll actually decrease our taxes. As you'll see in a minute, our enrollment's been pretty flat. But the way we count students in Vermont isn't just the number of students, but some of their characteristics on free and reduced lunch, ELL, and what grades they're in. So those are kind of how school taxing pieces get affected. I think you've all kind of heard those before. This is Maple Run's graph. That's similar to the graph that you saw from the state of Vermont. And this is from the year we merged in fiscal year 2018 to this current year right now. At that point, we had 578 employees. Today, we have 577 employees. At that point, we had 2,000, and K-12 students, not pre-K, we had 2,478 students, and now we have 2,454 students. We're almost 30 less. That's about a 1% drop over that entire time. So when I think of where I've worked in Vermont, I've worked mainly in Northeast Kingdom or Washington County, we were seeing a huge drop in students, almost 2 to 3% a year. So it's actually a really stable school system. A couple other things that we look at Maple Run, one of the things that's been asked about when you see all these employees, 577, what type of jobs do they have? And so we started to compare what does Maple Run look like compared to the Vermont average. which is in yellow, Maple Run's in green, and the national average, which is in red. So about 43% of our staff are teachers. They're special educators, they're first grade teachers, they're high school physics teachers, they're high school English teachers, they're teachers. You can look at our support services, which is like our occupational therapists and our physical therapists, our central office staffing is in there, school secretaries are in there, janitorial would be in there, custodial, maintenance. And then you can see paraprofessionals, which is our people that are paraprofessionals, our behavioral interventionists, and our level 2, which is personal care. Our student services are things like guidance, library, nurses, so you can see how we sit there, and then leadership, which are principals, assistant principals, deans of students, and athletic directors. And this is statewide definitions. It's not one that Bill made up, this is what the state is. Unfortunately, the feds don't follow the state, so I've had to reallocate this a little bit to make it fit. And when there's usually budget troubles, the first place people usually go to look for are leadership and central office positions, or district positions, and say, so how are you doing there? So this next graph will show you how we're doing as a district compared to state averages and national averages, and those percentages are actually percentages of FTE for Maple Run. So the first one that says school district superintendent officials, that's business manager, superintendent, assistant superintendent, IT director. You can see that we're below the state and national averages there. If you look at instructional coordinators, which are like curriculum directors, special ed directors, pre-K directors, instructional coaches, you can see we're below the Vermont average, but above the national average. And then if you look at principals, assistant principals, and deans, we're below those two, the national average and the state average as well. I put a line right here because people often say, like, well, do we need all these folks we have working in central office? And at central office, for central office personnel, this is like our HR people, our business people, our Medicaid clerk. That's those type of people. You can see we're between the state and national average on that. And some people think about, I would want to remind everybody that at 28 Catherine Street, half our office is our triple E people, our folks that work with early ed. So people think that, we've got 30 people that work out of that office, about half of them are working with a pre-K, which is required under Vermont statutes for pre-K education, because they go out and work with partner sites and in our schools with educating kids. The last part I wanted to show you here, and then I'll get to our budget. This is comparing our cumulative change of our budget, salaries, benefits, compared to the consumer price index. So the yellow line since FY18, the CPI has gone up almost 23% during that time in cumulative change. At that same time, our budget's gone up 37%. That's the purple line. At the red line is total salaries across the district, which has gone up about 26%. And our benefits have gone up almost 50%. And here's the astonishing thing. If we had followed the Green Mountain Care Board that was set for Vermont healthcare, which is required that we negotiate statewide, that line would go all the way up to 73%. Right now, if we hire a para-educator, the average salary is $32,000. The cost for their benefits is $36,000. It's $68,000 to hire a para. The benefits outstrip the salary. In a teacher's, our average teacher salary is $72,000. The benefits cost $41,000.
Can you give a list of the benefits?
So the benefits are health, dental, healthcare savings account, long-term disability, vision to a degree. It's an individual plan for vision, and workers' comp. Our healthcare our healthcare package right now that we have to assume for new personnel, district costs $32,000.
And the employee pays 20%.
Yep,
The healthcare is union contract?
it's a statewide union contract
No.
that we can't negotiate. We have to take it,
So are you saying 20% across the board for all those benefits, or just for healthcare?
just for the healthcare. The other healthcare, the healthcare is outstripping all the inflation. I mean, it's not even close. The other benefits, we're looking at, some of the rates are staying the same this year. But literally in healthcare alone, we had to go up from assuming, I'm doing this off memory, so I might be wrong, but somewhere around 26,000 to 32,000 just in this 1 year, going from FY '25 to FY '26. And our rate, this is bad, we were celebrating, our rate was at 11.9% increase. Last year we were at 18 for healthcare.
Have you ever looked at self-insured?
We can't do that under the state law, but
Because you're within that union.
we're within the state, the legislature made a law that they consolidated all healthcare bargaining. Maple Run was one of the leaders in the state before the health-wide bargaining came around. It really kept the budgets low because Maple Run had a really good relationship with the association, was able to have healthcare reimbursement accounts, which actually saved a lot of money. We're now healthcare savings accounts, since it was brought together under one statewide contract for negotiating healthcare. So some of the things to really celebrate, and I'm gonna talk about the sheet I handed out to you in a minute. This is our return on investment. How have our students been doing over the past 3 years? The top one is behavior, and this is no secret, we've all heard about the escalating behaviors in school. We changed our behavior system and how we collect data a year and a half ago now. We're almost halfway through the school year. In that, we went from reported behavior instances within across Maple Run from about 5,500 to almost 11,000 now. So we changed how we were tracking it, so we don't think that's really an accurate reflection, but why you see that negative 16% down is because we've had a lot more behavior instances, but we're being a lot more detailed in what we collect and what's actually happening with the kids, so we can do better interventions with kids. At the same time, a lot of folks I talk to don't see this, and it really, talking to teachers, it's hard to recognize it when you're every day. But our attendance is actually improving. It's not where we want it to be, but you can see we've had about 13%. Our biggest gains have been in our kids in self-reporting, where they are socially and emotionally. A huge increase there of about 34%. We have our kids, by their self-reporting and where they are in their own well-being, we're in the 90th percentile in the nation. We use a national assessment that tells our kids are doing better than 90% of the kids in the nation, and for how they're dealing with today's social problems that they're dealing with. And the other big thing is we made a big investment 2 years ago in literacy. We're seeing that pay off. We have a 41% improvement in literacy. Math, we started a new program this year to align, and we've seen 11 tracked by the state assessments, 11%, by our local assessments, 15%. And we hope to see that same rise in math that we've been seeing in literacy, because math's program's a year behind where we are. So that's kind of like, what have we been getting for what we're spending? Those are the data metrics we're keeping ourselves on track with for our students here at Maple Run. Okay. First draft of the budget, we're very preliminary. We had to make a lot of assumptions for the current budget. The board said to myself and to the team at the beginning of November, bring us a budget that's at 5%. At 3%, I'm not sure if you're all aware, but the governor sent out a letter back in late September, early October, asking school boards and superintendents and business managers to keep the budgets at 3% spending level. So the board told us a 5%, a 3%, and a flat budget at 0. And then tell us what it would take to get there. So we brought this first budget in at 4.99, but it has a lot of assumptions that will actually clear up in this next week because we don't have any revenue projections yet. So you can have all this spending, you know this as a council, but if you don't know where you're getting your money from, you can't say what's that doing overall to taxes. We said if we need to go down to, we currently have 23 unfilled positions in our budget, which represents $1.6 million. That's about 2% of the budget. And you can see if we wanted to go to a 3% budget, it would mean 24.2 FTE cuts. it's not 100% like all those open positions would go into being the cuts that happen because we're doing it based off of student needs, but we see it kind of almost being a wash there for money-wise, not necessarily the individual persons or those individual people. If we have not done a cut all the way down to 0 yet, we will have that next week, and how many positions that means. If we needed to do that, I don't know what it is quite yet because we're getting all the last pieces of data right now in on the revenue and a few more expenditures. We've had some estimates we had to put in there for contracts, especially we have students that are outplaced that might go to SOAR or to Runaway or to Vitality, and getting some of those prices and getting all that in right now for those costs. Just wanted to show you what's making the increase. As you can see, this is what has happened. If you look at the blue, that's salary. The orange is healthcare, and the green is other benefit costs. That's 76% of our budget is our HR, is our human resources. The other big thing that you see that's purple, that's up in the top part, is our costs for tuition, transportation, and that's really, we've had more kids that have needed outplacement, so that cost is escalating quite a bit for us. We told the board in November, in this year alone, we're seeing a $1.6 million increase in FY24 that we didn't expect to see for kids that were outplaced. A lot of that is kids that have moved into the district that were not in the district in FY24 that are there this year that we have to pay for. So we have to find out within the.
So outplaced means kids that can't be successful in our school, so they have to go to a different school. So
Yeah.
just for those of you not in
Yeah,
education.
thank you, Trudy. I knew you'd help me when you or Eric is gonna say, Bill, stop the educational leads and help me translate, so thank you. Yeah, they go to a private school that might either be therapeutic, or for another reason that students need to be placed out in another school system. And we've been starting to develop our own programs to try to cut that cost right now. We're in the midst of doing that. And I think that's all I put on there for right now, but that's currently where we're at. We're shooting for the third Wednesday, I think the 15th, of having the budget finalized. But we're also looking for a lot of input. On this presentation, I have a QR code here, but one of the things I handed out to the board, and I'd be glad to give anyone in the audience, we have this 2-pager that we've been using in all input sessions that on the front talks about when Maple Run was formed, the budgets just kind of came together. There were some efficiencies found in between schools, but there wasn't an allocation of staff based on what the student needs and student configuration and the number of students that were. This year, for this year's budget, we're doing that for FY26. It's the first time we're doing that. We're also looking, so that's where there's a description under core staffing allotment. And then you'll see some of what the goals are of the district and what the objectives are for this year. And then on the back, on the white side, the top half is information about just demographic information about how many students do we have, what's our average class size, how many kids are on support plans, how many kids are on free reduced lunch, and what's the change been in the past 3 years. So that first column is the current status, the second one is the 3-year change, and what are our key takeaways that we're seeing in that. In the middle, you'll see 2 things about budget, what's happened to the Maple Run budget overall. This is without reimburse any revenue, but just what's the spending happened in the past 3 years, and where we ranked out of that 122 districts that make their own budgets. And then the bottom part from attendance on down, I showed you a return on investment slide on this, but this is a table version of that of how are our students doing and what's been the change in the past 3 years.
You have the 80 million up there, you have 86 here.
Yeah.
80 million is more recent.
That's the proposed budget right now for FY26. The 76 is our current budget.
Only because they stare at Milton's budget all day, every day.
Yeah.
Not all day, but a lot. Can you specify why, I mean, I know we're different demographics, but why would we be $7,000 to $8,000 per student higher than like a rural town like Milton? Is it the number of
I don't think
buildings
we're
or-
that much, I only know per weighted student, Eric, so I don't know per pupil, but per weighted, we're not that much different. We actually have a pretty high poverty count, so our weight helps us quite a bit.
And my last question was the CLA being reassessed. I know I'm saying this out loud so people are watching here can hear too. The CLA does change the equation a little bit this year, but the CLA is based on the home value. We're having a reassessment. The reassessment will be done by the vote, but that doesn't mean the CLA still won't change the rate by July if the assessment's done by then, because that'll change us from 56% of where we're
So
at.
right now, we're projected at 56 for the CLA, but remember that gets equalized. They changed all the way CLA, and I do not want to get too technical for everybody, but it actually will change our CLA division. Last year it was at 64, it's gonna be a 77.
But that should lower 34% somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's gonna change. It's a very, believe me, I could come back and do all the CLA questions, but it's a very complex. The legislature last year made the common level appraisal more complex than it was prior.
Oh, yeah.
When are we expecting completion of our?
We'll have draft values in the spring. We'll lodge our grand list for April 1st, but we'll know the final values after the grievance period is over in August,
So
which is typical of any
what
grand
we're
list.
doing won't have an impact on this year's vote.
I'm not sure how, exactly how the reappraisal is going to affect the school
That's
budget.
actually one, right?
We're hoping to have it, it won't have an impact on the vote, but it'll have an impact on the tax rate.
I guess that was my question, yeah.
That's what you, yeah. But next year, when when the bills go out, it will reflect new values with a CLA, it should be at 100,
Should be over 100.
Right.
right?
But that won't be indicated as on the tax rate for fiscal year 26.
There will be.
So I have a question then. Does that mean that the voters are gonna be voting uninformed if the CLA is gonna change and impact the actual numbers? come out in
Not
July?
exactly. What the CLA does is it reappraises the entire community at once. After the reappraisal, if you're, based on the market, your property is worth a little bit more than your neighbors, a little bit less than your neighbors, or about the same, that could affect your individual, what you actually pay in taxes going up or down. The value of your home goes up, and everyone's is going to go up. It's about how much yours goes up versus everyone else. Tax rate's going to go down because the school budget's going to be the same. The amount of money that needs to be raised is going to be the same. And so it's actually not going to have a drastic effect on everyone's ultimate tax bill. It'll go up or down a little bit based on how your home compares to everyone else's homes. So, I mean, the CLA kind of does a little community-wide reappraisal for us until we can actually do it ourselves, which is what we're doing next year. It's really going to be about, the amount of taxes you pay is going to be based on the school budget that gets passed on town meeting day.
Okay, because that doesn't change. It doesn't mean that the city's gonna raise more money because.
Right, we're not going to raise more money. We're going to raise the same amount of money no matter what, whether or not we've done a reappraisal. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Bill, what's the status of the PCB remediation in the 3 schools, 4 schools?
So so we found PCBs in 3 of the 4 schools. BFA is the only one that didn't test outside the limits. I should say this one, PCBs are in every school. They all have them. It's just what level of limit that you hit. BFA passed. It's also, the limits they're not as stringent limits as you get older in age. So for pre-K students, there are very stringent limits. We have pre-K in 3 of our 4 buildings. So
Is that based on the air testing or is that the surface testing?
that's the air testing.
Okay.
So on the air testing, we found, we had to go back in Fairfield and City, and we found PCBs, so then there was surface testing done, and we're actually getting ready to do remediation in both those buildings, hopefully.
But just to clarify, when you say found, it's not through the entire building, it's only, it could be portions of it.
It's in different places. No one's at risk. The places where it has been found is actually, luckily for the district, are in areas in which students aren't present. storage areas, closets, so we've made those off limits.
So what is your expectation for the amount of that expenditure?
I don't have a cost on that right now.
Yep.
We're trying to work on that with our remediation expert. I can tell you the state has run out of any funds, so it will come out of the Maple Run budget.
And then I have two more.
Yeah.
So when we talk about free lunch
Yeah.
for everyone, is that goes into your budget?
That goes into the state education fund, so they take it right out of the state education fund. It doesn't go into our budget at all.
It doesn't show in your budget
No.
at all?
But it's a big dip in the fund.
It's a big dip in the ed fund.
29 million, I think, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's where I was trying to get at, is that there's millions.
that's legislative action.
Close
that
to
require
100
that.
million, I'm not exactly right, I'd have to go total it up, I didn't bring my sheet with me, but there's a lot of things that are outside, that are being collected in the ed fund that are non-pre-K-12 instruction, and that's one on my list.
And then I guess the only thing, tell me if I heard this wrong, but I was surprised to hear that of all the staffing, it's only 43% is teachers.
Yep, I can go back to that.
But that's what it is right now.
It's 43, and you can see the state average is around 41, the national average is around 47.
Are those teachers that face students on a regular basis?
Mhm.
Or are those the coaches and the specialists?
No, the coaches are in a support person.
Those are actual,
Those are
with
teachers
kids on a
with
regular
kids.
basis? Okay.
Questions, anyone for Bill?
I have one, Bill. I noticed that on the back of the sheet here, you have students on support plans
Yep.
that had a dramatic percentage increase.
Yep.
Why is that? What does that increase involve?
Well, that increase starts in 2021, which is the year after the pandemic. So we've gone way up. We are using better assessments now to identify kids that have learning gaps. And we have new curricula which is identifying that as well. So I think that that's really coming to, leads into that. I haven't dug into it to the point to say what's the actual cause for each of those. You know, we had these gaps before the pandemic. They only got exacerbated and more noticeable since the pandemic. Before the pandemic, roughly around 50% of the students in Maple Run were on grade level. At our lowest point in 2022, we were down in the low teens, and now we're getting back, we're up. The latest thing I have is we're around 38–40%, which is about the national average for kids on grade level targets. Yeah, I feel sad saying that I don't feel good as a professional saying that, you know, 35–40% of our students on grade level targets, but that's the national average too. We've come back to the national average.
And
We're not happy with that. We would like that to be a lot higher.
so you figure that the COVID-19 contributed to that by, you know, being out of school or having to do it.
Yeah, I just can't get to exactly what it is, but I agree with generally what you're saying. Was it from not being in school, lack of there was a lot of missed instruction. Where we had a year where we were remote and, you know, we were hybrid. That was not anything equal to what it means being in school for 180 days.
Any projection as to when they may catch up?
If we keep on the trends we're going,
Yeah.
we're gonna be back there in a couple of years, which is good. Now, most of the experts is saying it's about a 10 to 13 year to recoup.
I think it depends on your grade level. So I teach 3rd grade, so next year, my kids should be less impacted because they weren't in preschool. So the behaviors also have taken a huge increase, which ties hand in hand with academics.
Yeah.
Good behavior.
Not so much.
So Trudy, I actually agree with you because what research has shown for K-12, if you want to make a drastic change, you have to start at kindergarten, and unfortunately, it has to roll up with that class all the way to the graduate from high school.
I think your challenge is the fact that we went from the 72nd highest spending district in the state to the 33rd highest spending district in the state, like that double-digit increases year after year.
Yeah.
I think your board has to make sure they have really sharp pencils Because we've increased a lot of people, but it's not necessarily giving us the results that you would think. So I think, I don't know, I'd be looking at.
Yeah. I would push back that we had a 577 and we have 578 when we merged, and we're at 577 now for employees.
Well, who makes the assessment whether somebody needs some kind of special service or something like that?
So that's
You said people are
done,
now identified, we identified more people, who's making the identification?
that's coming through our local assessment plan. So the kids take tests 3 times a year, benchmark assessments.
Yeah.
And then also the teachers and what they're working with the parents. Under ID, I'm gonna have this wrong, but under federal law, let me just say it that way, a parent can ask for an evaluation at any time for the student's need.
But you can say no.
And what's the goal?
What's the goal?
Yeah.
Grade level, on grade level target.
And you said Vermont is where in the United States?
I didn't say where that was. Vermont right now, I can tell you right now from what I've seen, our reading at the 4th grade level is 11th out of the 51. And at the 8th grade level, they're 4th in reading. In math, they're 21st at the 4th grade and 28th at the,
And who sets where we need to be?
no one.
Okay, so why, if I'm in Vermont, why would I want to be, I'm not saying this right.
Yeah,
Why do I care if I'm number 1, if I'm at least par with other states? And
yeah,
why would I want to spend the extra money
it's a good question.
to get there when I don't need to be there? Just because a bunch of people say that I need to be there? And does that bunch of people speak for the community at large? That's the question, right?
Yeah, it's a great
I
question.
think the question was, and I saw it somewhere in an editorial, I want the best for my schools, but I don't want to go broke.
Right, I agree with you on that one, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I'm just trying to figure it out.
And for me, this is why I'm out here trying to do this, but the board wants to be here, because I want to hear from the community before we go and set a budget. Because I watched what a third of the districts went through in the state of Vermont last year, 2, 3, 4, 5, Barry 6. I might have that off by 1. I mean, they just adopted a budget in Barry in September. And the havoc that put through not only the kids, the staff, but through the kids and the community, that I'd rather hear now as we're building than let's build one and be out of sync with the community. So I think your question, Tim, is right on point. And that's what the question is to any school board is, we want the best education our community can afford. It's not, you don't separate those two, you say those together.
One last question, anyone? Chad, you good? Marie, you good? Eric? You good, thank you.
You certainly have no obligation to be here talking to us right now, I'm really glad you are.
And I would ask you to talk to our board members, talk to me. I mean, I'm gonna pass the information along. I know one of the things that happened for us last year, there were only 2 budgets in Franklin County that passed. We were one of them. We hired a lot of teachers from places that didn't have a budget, because if we don't have a budget, then I've gotta start releasing teachers right after the first budget season. And so what happens is people start going looking for where there's stable jobs. And that helps our kids.
Bill, thanks for coming in. I just point out you went over your minute, but that's all right.
Tim, you're supposed to keep me on track.
That's where the math comes in.
No,
Thanks,
before
Mark.
you leave, can I ask you one
Yeah.
other question? Has there ever been a time when we didn't pass the budget?
So there hasn't been as Maple Run consolidated. The town didn't pass it, and I don't have the exact year, but I wanna say it was about 10 years ago. The town rejected one budget.
So the community is usually pretty supportive.
This is a really supportive, it's one of the reasons I'm here, Tim, one of many. And I felt that ever since I've been here for the 6 years. People have been really supportive. So,
Thank you, Bill.
I appreciate it, thank you so much for your time.
Drive safe. Entertain a motion to recess.
Motion to recess and move into electric.
Second that.
Boy, you wanna come up?
How are you guys tonight?
Good, yourself?
So we have, on Zoom, we have Doug and Nick. They are going to be the prospective new owners of the Beverage Mart. So we are here to approve their license, their second class and their tobacco license, for once they take over from Ross.
What was the date?
I believe it's gonna be January.
January, Ross?
January 2nd.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We have your application before us. Do you want to give a quick overview of your history and where you operate out of? If you can hear me.
Okay.
Yeah, speak up a little bit.
Sorry, my name is Doug Brines. I'm an attorney for Nick Ball and the Groseva Corporation, who will be purchasing the beverage mart. This is relatively a straightforward transaction. There really is no changes intended. The new owners intend to maintain the character of the business. They have no violations in the past, and it's something that we feel will be a good fit for the community.
So Doug, what's your client's experience in this type of operation? It's Tim Hawkins. What's your client's experience in this type of operation?
Yeah. Nick, do you want to answer that?
Yeah. I've been doing this liquor industry business for last 20 years in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And we operate as a family business all the time. Each location are separate. So for example, when Ross business we take over, if you guys approve it, I'm going to have my nephew going to be in St. Albans. He's going to be moving over there. I think he's planning to move in less than 2 weeks. So basically replacement is the Ross and putting a new owner. Keeping the staff as is, nothing going to be changed. Just the change of ownership. Store going to be as is, the better service what Ross provide, and he's doing excellent for last 40 plus years. And we're going to do the same service in the town.
So you said you have 20 operations? How many other businesses you have that are similar to this? 20? Did I hear you say that right?
No, mostly the liquor store and the gas station.
How many?
I have 9 in Massachusetts, and we bought 1 gas station in Vermont back in October. That has a beer and wine.
That was at Coventry.
How does the Vermont process compare to the Massachusetts process?
The process is a little bit different on the liquor side because liquor controlled by the state. So state did everything background check on my personal, and they just approve it. We secure the state license. Now we have to go to the front of the town like today, or beer and wine license. Everything, the rules, the state by state is all same rule for the liquor. So we're gonna maintain the same rules. We're gonna have a scanning ID device in place for age verification that require, in Massachusetts. So if Ross doesn't have it, we will install it to verification age is the scanning device.
Have you read the liquor regulations in the city of St. Albans? Nitan?
Yeah.
Have you read the city of St. Albans liquor regulations?
No, we read the state of Vermont regulation, what I talked to the state liquor board commission.
Do you know that the city of St. Albans has its own regulations?
We have reviewed the liquor control regulations, yes.
I did email that portion of our ordinance to them.
So Nicole has said she emailed you our local one. Have you received that?
Sorry, if you can hear me, yeah, we reviewed the Title 23 liquor control regulations, and we've been, I think, in compliance with all the regulatory.
Doug, the Title 23 liquor regulations are not the same as the City of St. Albans liquor regulations. And my question to you was, did you read the City of St. Albans liquor regulations?
I believe we did review them, yes, in the process.
I'm gonna go off track here a little bit. Ross, does this include the doghouse?
Yes.
Do you have intentions of opening up the snack bar as well, Mr. Purdell? Could you hear me?
This will include the snack bar in restaurants in service there. As is. But not the catering service.
Can I have questions?
So you've never had a violation in Vermont. Have you had violations in Massachusetts and the other states that you've operated in?
I don't.
Okay.
No, any questions?
No.
Marie, you good?
The only thing not included in your packet as well, Nick and Doug sent me their insurance, so I do have that.
Does it have the City of St. Albans as last page? Down at the bottom where your thumb is?
It says Town of St. Albans, but we can change that to say City of St. Albans.
That's a
Everybody
very
puts
bad
town.
word, isn't it?
Everybody puts town in it.
Eric, any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I have a couple of general comments.
Chad, you're good?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Tim, go ahead.
I'm very excited for Ross because he wants to sell his business. I'm a little skeptical about somebody coming in and running the business the way he's run it over the last 45 years. We've come to know that place to be very regimental, meaning that they fulfill all the requirements that we expect them to fulfill. We haven't had a lot of problems down there. It's been a very good business for the community, and I'm just worried that we're going to lose that with a new owner. But change is change, you know, and I don't like it when we have someone who is quite an established person like Ross is running that type of business to somebody new that we don't know. But I would wish him luck. I hope they look at the liquor regulations because we take that very seriously, just like Ross took those very seriously. And I hope they can make a good go of it, but there's a number of things they have to do under the St. Albans City regulations that you are not required to do under the Title 23 regulations. I'm a little reluctant to see Ross go. I'm excited for him because he's going to sell the business, but I wish he was here for another 4 years.
I don't have it in me.
How much experience does your nephew have running a business like this?
He's been with me for the last 7 years.
And he's
He's right now.
He's run other stores?
Yeah, he's gonna be moving to St. Albans, and right now he's running my store in Somerville, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Tim, Nick is gonna keep on my general manager, which is Sean Montague from Bakersfield. And I'm gonna stay on as a consultant for 2 years as well. And his nephew's coming up to shadow me until we leave for Florida. But I just thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah, okay.
So he's gonna keep Sean on. And I don't know if you've met Sean,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he's as good as I am.
Yep.
He really is.
I doubt that, but okay.
Well,
Yeah, there's no doubt that you're definitely gonna have some big shoes to fill, because coming from the licensee side of it, Ross runs a grade A store. So I wish you luck, but it's gonna be a lot of hard work. I don't think anybody gets up in this town earlier than Ross. And can yell at a beer salesman that early, Jesus.
I'll make a motion to approve the liquor license for Jurasiva Corporation, Beverage Mart.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the liquor license as presented by Nicole. Any other comments or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, and the liquor license, Marty?
I'd just like to echo Chad and Tim's sentiments on Ross. He has done his own neighborhood revitalization down there. His property is always immaculate. We don't need to worry about doing the sidewalks in front of his property when it snows. As far as the state's concerned, his liquor store is always one of the top performing stores. We use his store as an example for other agents that come in to go up and take a look at it and see how it's run and how clean it is. And the bar has been set high for these new owners, so I'd just like to thank Ross for everything he's done and the job he's done down there on Lake Street.
Thank you, Marty. Ross started there when he was 5 years old.
Nicole, you'll make that change to City of St. Albans?
Yeah.
So gentlemen, the liquor license has been approved. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to reach out to any of us for if you have any questions or concerns. We're here to make sure that you continue on the same path that Ross was and be successful. So thank you for your interest in St. Albans, and we look forward to meeting you.
Thank you. I'll be coming Saturday if you guys, anybody around, love to see you.
You'll be at the store all day Saturday?
No, I have to see Ross manager around 10 o'clock in the morning. And then I will be there for half an hour for the neighborhood. Then we're gonna be back in the store again.
Okay.
I'll be there until 1:30, 2 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Motion to move, oh, sorry. We have a couple of other things.
Thank you.
Other business?
Nope, I have nothing else.
I didn't see, maybe I missed it. Do we have the graph of what's going on with the liquor licenses and who's been charged with what? And it's been all quiet on the Western Front?
It's been a little quiet, I haven't received anything.
Good.
Yep.
So that's good that we haven't received anything.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, and I reached out probably in the spring just to make sure with liquor control, and they said we didn't have anything, so.
Okay.
And I can certainly reach out again just to make sure that there wasn't something that was missed somewhere.
Prior to the renewals.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, guys.
Is there a second? Thank you.
Second.
Second by Trudy. All those in favor say aye. We'll reconvene council meeting. Consider corrections to April 24th grand list, and that's Chip is going to join us.
Thank you very much. First of all, for the TIF district, the state asks us to track inactive parcels that are in the district as well as the active ones. And the parcel can be inactive for various different reasons, but our last audit of the TIF district by our auditors discovered that there were a couple inactive parcels that, one that had never been added to the TIF district by mistake, and one that for some reason had been deleted. We're not sure why it had been deleted, but no one really caught it because it's an inactive parcel. So, errors and omissions form tonight is just to add one to the TIF district, and for the second one to recreate the parcel as an active and add it to the TIF district.
Motion to approve those corrections.
Second.
Any questions for Chip? No values, Chip?
Yeah, you're inactive, there's no value.
Okay. Any other questions for Chip? Hearing none, all those in favor of the errors and omissions certificate, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to first reading of amendments for multi-dwelling overlay district. Yeah, that in the packet, there, that.
We created the multi-dwelling overlay districts for places that had historically been commercial or industrial that under the current market are probably unlikely to be redeveloped unless we allow some sort of residential development there. And the first property that we added to the multi-dwelling overlay district was the Fonda property, which has paid off well because it became the key that allowed us to redevelop Fonda. We'd like to, well, one of the other properties that the Planning Commission always had in mind when they created this district was the former USCIS headquarters on Lower Weldon Street. Everything we're hearing is that that property is very, very unlikely to ever become an office use like it was in the past. The current owner right now is using it in some sort of deficient way as a warehouse, and that's probably indicative of where the market is in that type of property. So to enable and increase the redevelopment options for that property, the amendment here is to add the USCIS parcel 65 and 75 Lower Weldon to the multi-dwelling overlay district, and also add the former police station, current fire station at 32 Lower Weldon as well. The fire apparatus and the fire station is still there, but for the other sections of the property, adding it to the MDOD means it could also increase the possibilities in using the rest of the site. And the multi-dwelling overlay district is an overlay district, which means that all of the service industrial uses and standards on that site still exist. It's just we're now also adding an option to do multifamily development on the property as well. The other change is to allow the DRB to consider for a development project in the MDOD to consider the possibility of only requiring one parking space per dwelling unit that has one bedroom or that's a studio apartment. We're hearing from the development community that some of these larger projects, once you get to a certain number of dwelling units, you start to get diminishing returns if we require the same number of parking spaces per unit, and you end up with a parking lot that's bigger than what you need. So this change would allow a developer to come to the DRB and make their case to say that for some of the apartments that are smaller, please only require one parking space instead of 1.5. So those are the proposed amendments.
Chip, you never come here asking for changes unless you know something. So what do you know that we don't know?
I can neither confirm nor deny. These changes,
I can take that, Chair.
yeah,
Dom knows more.
Yeah, Dom knows more.
Dom can say what we know.
You achieve some economies of scale as you get beyond a certain level of units, right? And you achieve that even more so when you have a mix of units that includes one bedrooms and studios. And one of the developers that's interested in Fonda has reflected that in their proposal. So this initiative was, there was a confluence of those two ideas. Chip referenced what we're hearing from the development community. We've heard it from others before, but it's also complementary to the effort to facilitate the Fonda development.
So we're trying to get a Fonda type development down at the old building.
Well,
No, there aren't development proposals on the other two. Those are other large lots where there's development potential.
and I'd say I think that what's happening at the USCIS building is bothering a lot of folks in the city, and we'd like to make sure that if we can spark something else there, it'd be to our benefit. This zoning change could be one of those. So really, it's really, when it comes to the First Amendment, it's really about adding this to the USCIS. And since we're in the neighborhood, we'll add it to our little parcel at 30 Lower Weldon 2. Maybe it could spur new possibilities there. The Second Amendment about the parking really is about some issues that have been raised
makes sense.
about Fonda. Yeah.
I'm okay with it, but I wish you were gonna say, oh, well, we have someone coming in that's going to do this, right?
Well, I did,
We're always the last to hear about it, we're the city council, right?
Anyone have any other questions for Chip?
And there's no one interested in that old immigration building for office space?
No. Warehouse. Currently, warehouse.
This is just a first reading, it's more a matter of getting your reactions and seeing if there's anything you want to change for a second.
Okay, no questions, comments? All right, we'll see you next month, Chip.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
I think you're staying with us for number 7. Second reading and adoption of amendments of prohibited parking on the south side of Stebbins.
Yeah, we've known for a while that it's hard when you've got cars parked on both sides of Stebbins Street and there's a truck in one of the travel lanes, that sometimes people have to stop and let the other vehicle go by. When I looked at, for a while we've had signs on both sides of Stebbins with timed parking saying that you could park on both sides. It actually turns out that parking on the south side of Stebbins, to the east of what was the old Fonda Company building, WG Fonda, it already was prohibited. We known for a while that we wanted to take out the parking on the southern side, so this change actually just was a matter of striking out the reference to the WG Fonda Company and applying the prohibition on the entire side of the street.
I don't think that was ever the problem. The real problem to me, up and down that street, was on the south side of the Passport building. It was really hard to get cars down there. Troy had called me and said, look, we're losing a bunch of spaces, and I had left him a message saying, look, our understanding was there was a bunch of spaces that were never supposed to be there anyway. But going back and looking at it, I thought about it, and I've been there 25 years. My office has been down there 25 years. And there's never been a problem around that corner. And the only way to get out of it would be for us not to have truck traffic going up 7th Street. I just don't think we could do that. There's just no way we could do that.
It's the best access to Main.
Yeah, so we're trying to get them over either on Catherine or Market Street, and they're gonna go up there. And we certainly don't want them going up Weldon if we can keep away from it. So the only way we can do it is this. I mean, I hate to see us losing those parking spots, but I don't know if we have any other alternatives.
It's the best infrastructure for trucks.
Yeah, and that's where we want the trucks. So we don't want to go up Lake Street, and we don't want them going up those other streets. And I really don't want them going up 7th Street, but really to think about it, that's the only street they can go up. And to take these parking spaces away from somebody, they really weren't there anyway, a long time ago. They just were created.
When the Federal Street connector is completed,
Yeah.
lay down a marker in the minutes so that, you'll probably still be on the council. You can go back.
Yeah. And I hate to say, I mean, yeah, you're gonna lose these spots, but what's our alternative? We really don't have one. And this is the best that I think we can do. And
Does that connector go down, I can't remember the bottom half, but go all the way down past MRC to like right opposite the access road, or does that?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Basically, coming through off the access road, you would go
go
straight.
straight.
Yeah, and you just
Yeah,
go
yeah,
around straight.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, thank you.
If that ever happens. Not in my lifetime.
It's just getting really much to do that.
We're working on it.
Any other questions for Chip on this?
I got a question.
Yeah.
I can remember they used to use Kingman Street, the trucks did. And that's about 40 some odd years ago.
Kingman Street's really become one of our downtown streetscape streets. Trucks can use it. It's better than Lake or Lower Weldon,
Yeah.
but it's gotten a little narrower since we've added some of the pedestrian accommodations.
Oh, okay.
Stebbins is the best.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
Well, I can remember they used to go up there, and I was just thinking, you get to the top, you can see, get out enough, you can see traffic too.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you're taking them right onto the major part of Main Street. And they're gonna go around the major.
Back across.
It's like Newell, I mean, I'm seeing still trucks, I'm sure you are too, going up White Street. And making a left-hand turn to get on North
Yeah, I've
Main.
seen that, yeah.
And that's a bear of a street to have a big truck going up there. And yeah, it kind of doesn't work when they get up there anyway, but,
Even in Newton Street, when they come around,
Yeah.
coming down, you gotta hope you're over enough.
yeah.
You don't-
Believe me, I've looked at this and talked to a few people and tried to think of another solution, you really can't. And my business is on there, so believe me, I don't want trucks going up there, but, you know, I can't speak for myself, I can speak for what's best for the city, and I think that's the best alternative.
Yeah,
You know, until we get that connector in, right?
just thought I put it in because I remember seeing it going that way.
I'll make a motion to approve we're second reading, right?
Yes.
So we're to prohibit the parking on the south side of 7th Street.
For a second? Second by Eric. Any further comments or questions for Chip? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion amendment passes. We'll sign off on that, Chip.
Thank you.
Chip, you're still up on number 8, where we will be talking about the authorization of brownfield grant for 175 Lake Street.
This is sort of one of the last steps in getting some funding for some of the brownfield work that's already occurred at 175 Lake Street, but it's a required part of the grant that we get this resolution passed by the council. And it authorized the city staff to accept the grant.
Jeff, this is just a pass-through grant?
Yeah, it's a pass-through.
And 175 is,
The new multi-family building.
and would that be applicable to the potential senior housing on that?
No, this is just for the building that's up right now.
You need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to authorize the brownfield grant for 175 Lake.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Judy, seconded by Marie. Any other comments or questions for Chip? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Yep.
Oh,
I
Michael?
have one question for Chip. Where the fire department is there now? That building looks run down. Is that going to change for a new building for the fire department? That building is in rough shape.
Plans for the fire department?
The city's working on the redevelopment concept, which those plans should be reflected in the forthcoming budget proposal. That will keep the fire department there and make the building more reflective of our civic pride.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm on it.
I brought it up last month.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passed. Chip, any signatures? We're moving on to item number 9, which is second reading and adoption of the public nuisance properties ordinance, which has generated quite a bit of discussion, I think, for all of us throughout town. So with that, I'll turn it over to the city manager, Dominic, for the presentation, and we'll open it up for public comment after that.
Let me walk you through the structure and the mechanics of the ordinance as we did last time. Along the way, we'll reflect some of the changes that we've made based on the council input, and then ask you to consider an additional change at the recommendation of the chief of police. The amendments are to our existing Title VII, the Fire Protection and Prevention Ordinance. This is where we have an existing landlord registry program in which all of the rental housing in the city is inspected once every 4 years. And properties that pass inspection receive a certificate of habitability. So the first change is on page 87 in the ordinance. Under the rental registry program, residential dwelling unit owners must provide a list of information to the code enforcement officer, who is presently the fire chief and the building inspector. And it lists the whole series of items from the address of the property to the number of bedrooms and what can cause a violation. None of that changes, but as you recall, last time we added in that a template of the lease of the dwelling unit must be provided, and all leases must attach a copy of Chapter 8 of this ordinance relating to public nuisances and include the following language. Attaches the public nuisance ordinance of the city. Any actions by a tenant, guests, visitors, or others invited to or caused to come to the premises of this rental, even without invitation, thus resulting in it becoming a public nuisance, may be evicted from the rental upon final determination that a public nuisance has occurred or is occurring. So this puts the tenants on notice and requires the landlord to do so. Following adoption of this ordinance, we will mail a copy of this to all the participants in the existing building inspection program. So no changes from last time there. Direct your attention forward to Chapter 8. It begins on section 103. And just to recap, here, there's section 2200 cites the city's authority to enact this ordinance. Section 2201 lists the statement of findings and purpose. The most important one is the first finding, where the council declares that properties where police are repeatedly called for disorderly conduct, assault, larceny investigations, robbery investigations, prostitution, sex trafficking, illicit drug use, noise, and disturbance of the peace. The council asks that it's changed to are public nuisances instead of maybe that threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. The chief over the weekend suggested that we add to that list possession of stolen property. The ordinance continues. Vermont law authorizes the city to define what constitutes a public nuisance and provide procedures to take actions for its abatement. The council therefore finds that public nuisance properties, as herein defined, threaten the public health, safety, and welfare, and has developed this ordinance to take actions for its abatement and removal. The definition section defines a public nuisance property as a rental unit that has received 3 or more criminal citations within a 90-day period, or a civil violation of the city's fire protection and prevention ordinance, or the PHSO, public health and safety ordinance. So 3 of those within 90 days, that's the definition. We continue to exempt acts related to domestic violence, and there's no changes, or I think a need to highlight the remainder of the definitions before we read the ordinance. What's important, I think, is to spend a little bit more time highlighting the procedure. So section 2203 is the procedure for addressing public nuisance properties. The fire chief or the marshal shall serve as the enforcement officer. If the enforcement officer believes nuisance activities are occurring that could qualify as a public nuisance property, the officer shall notify in writing the property owner listed on the registry. So that's a heads up. That's the initial letter that says, hey, this is going on. Do you know this is occurring? That's the initial notice. That doesn't mean that they are a PNP. That's the heads up. Section 3, if the enforcement officer believes that despite that earlier notice, the property has become a public nuisance property, the officer notifies the property owner and requests a meeting to address the conditions that led to the determination. The notification is in writing and shall delineate the specific conditions that the city seeks to be remediated. The meeting shall occur within 10 calendar days of the notice unless extended by the enforcement officer. At the meeting, the enforcement officer and the property owner shall seek to develop a written nuisance abatement plan. If a mutually agreeable plan is agreed to, the performance of the plan shall become part of the enforcement record for the property. Nuisance abatement plans should be reasonable under the circumstances and structurally implemented within 45 days. So that's pretty straightforward and simple. Step 1, hey, we think there might be a problem. Step 2, hey, we think there is a problem. Come in and talk about it, and let's make a plan. If a mutually agreeable plan is not agreed to, or if the property owner does not respond to requests for a meeting, the enforcement officer may refer the matter to the city council for a public nuisance property hearing. Now we're in step 3. So if the property owner doesn't respond, or the property owner doesn't like the plan that the enforcement officer came up with, either one of them can kick it up to this body. Public nuisance property hearing, city council shall hold a PNP hearing upon referral by the enforcement officer or appeal by the property owner. The property owner, the tenants, and the adjoiners shall receive at least 14 days written notice of the hearing. So whether you live there and are a tenant, or whether you own the property, you get the same notice. The notice shall delineate the specific nuisance activity in detail. The hearing shall be a quasi-judicial hearing. The enforcement officer, property owner, tenants, and adjoiners shall have an opportunity to be heard. They be represented by counsel and provide witnesses and experts as necessary. And the burden of proof is on the city. The city shall have the burden of proving the allegations by preponderance of the evidence. Following the conclusion of the hearing, the city council shall issue a decision. And in writing their decision, the council may provide for any combination of the following. In order the property owner to perform necessary building or property repairs and maintenance, add lighting, add security cameras, add a security system, limit access to common areas, issue no trespass notices. You can order the property owner to initiate eviction proceedings. All of this logically flows from the evidence that's presented in the hearing. You can fine the property owner up to $800 per day for non-compliance with the conditions of the nuisance abatement plan and/or the city council's decision. And the council has pretty wide discretion here. You can utilize, but it is not limited to the following factors in making the determinations: the disturbance of the neighbors, the recurrence of loud and obnoxious noises, actions or lack of actions taken by the property owner, whether the problem with the property was repeated or continuous, the magnitude or severity of the health hazard created at the property, the cost of the city investigating and correcting or attempting to correct the public nuisance, and ongoing violations of the rental registry program and/or the public health and safety limits. Council can also declare the unit and/or the property a public nuisance under section 2108, subsection 5A of this ordinance, and direct the enforcement officer to revoke the certificate of habitability for the property under the rental registry program. Now, that's not new language. The enforcement officer has had the ability to revoke the certificate of habitability since we started inspecting buildings 10 years ago. When a fines or violation has occurred, the city council's decision may be enforced provisions of pursuant to the provisions of Title 24, Section 1974A, and then there's an effective date. So if you pass this, we will initiate the process which has our ordinances take effect. There's some time where we allow for what's called a permissive referendum, and once we get beyond that, it will take effect in January.
What do you see a nuisance abatement plan looking like? So that seems like a step before, we order evictions and like what you see that the chief recommending for plans to not get to that point.
Dear property owner, here's the list of violations over the last 30 days. And we notice that there have been 6 violations, and 3 of them report back to this unit. And the other 2 are violations of people who were visiting there, right? And so we think you should initiate eviction proceedings on these folks who are the problematic tenants in this one unit, and come up with additional actions for folks that are visiting there, which might be the security measures, might be no trespass notices. It really depends on the the facts and what's driving it. You know, I can envision other scenarios where you can't isolate the behavior to a particular unit. And, but the evidence is pretty overwhelming that over the 3-month period, you know, the cops are there, you know, on average three times a week, right?
Right.
And so that plan might be a lot more severe. You know, there might be fines out of the gate.
Yeah, I think that actually that leads right into my next one. So some of the listed offenses are here. Just one I wanted to ask about, just because you know the severity of these offenses, you know, are pretty great. You know, from sex trafficking down to noise violations.
Yeah.
There would be, I'm imagining some. So I'll put it like this. When I was just out of college, I rented a place on High Street. All right, we're young kids, had a mean old upstairs neighbor. And twice a month in the summer, she'd call the cops because something was too loud and blah, 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 blah. We would, as a city, kind of intelligently say, okay, this is kind of nothing. Obviously, there's one touchy neighbor with a bunch of young kids who really aren't doing anything wrong, just the other neighbors just call happy. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I just want to make sure like we're not putting that on the same level as we're putting, you know, we're seeing drug deals and, you know, weapons and, you know.
Stolen property.
Right.
I have the same question about noise. I feel like noise is very,
I just feel like it's a petty one.
it's just very subjective.
That would never get through this board. That would never get to this level. We would never allow it.
That's true. Okay.
This council would never allow that.
So,
So if it did, which I doubt, it ever got up to this level, we would never authorize that. It has to get to us in order for there to be some real meaning
so
to
do
the
we,
statute.
put it in here?
If it's never gonna get
Or
to us,
not?
what's the point?
Right, so that's my question. I have a couple other things too, but,
What about noise blowing off fireworks?
well, I'm more concerned.
So I would want to have that in here.
The loud trucks though, that live next door to you. If I have some, you know, there's one down my street. He needs a talking to again, Artie. So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, fireworks too, aren't they already in? We already have them in for fireworks, for instance.
But it doesn't rise to the level of being a public nuisance.
Gotcha.
This public nuisance gives us a lot of leeway, you know, for the public. So I would want to keep noise in there, and then we can make the call.
Just to clarify your point, Eric's asking about fireworks. You're saying it is a public nuisance.
It would be.
It will.
We would be able to call it a public nuisance under this
I would agree.
because of the noise level. Same thing with the motorcycle revving or the car revving or, you know, those types of things.
This ordinance is written to give the council as much discretion as possible and the ability to deal with the significant quality of life issues that happen when you're living next to a nuisance property, right? And it's based a lot on models from around the country where other communities have grappled with this. You know, I don't think noise is at the top of the list, but if you're
If you live next to it.
that's just
It could
it.
be, right,
Yeah.
it could be.
Yeah.
I was wondering last time and this time too, 3 or more within a 90-day period, that seems like a lot. So if I'm a neighbor and every month for 3 months, there's this big drug bust next door, feels like that's a long time to wait, or 3 just seems like a high number to me. Or, I don't know, I know we always seem to like 3.
I mean,
Or increasing the number of days, like 3 over, I don't know,
that's a common threshold in some of the ordinances.
some of the others, okay. I mean, and we can try it and just see if we need to
You know,
change it. Like, how many times are the police at some of our nuisance properties now in a month? Probably it would be
well,
or
yes.
more, 3 or more.
Yeah.
You know, if you have 3 over the first month,
then it kicks this into action. And right now, if I'm a landlord and I have a property that has challenges, what happens now? This gives whatever happens now way more teeth. Because you get fined, you get
You don't,
spoken to by the city,
you get fines now based on the physical condition of your property.
not the behavior of or
Not-
the activities.
You can be running a 24/7 drug dealing operation, a 24/7 prostitution ring, a 24/7 sex trafficking ring, or lighting M80s off,
Mhm.
right?
As long as the property looks good, you're fine.
And there isn't a whole lot we can do about it through here. The only way you can get at it is through our traditional enforcement mechanisms with the police department, or if it gets bad enough that it violates the public health and safety ordinance.
And this will help landlords also to create a lease that includes language around criminal activity,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it requires it, yeah.
And not all leases do now,
No.
right? So that would help landlords. So I see this as a way to help landlords get the wrong tenants out of their buildings and help the neighbors.
Yes,
So it's not like, I don't see this as negative to a landlord. If you're a good landlord, this shouldn't be an issue for you.
Tim, what's your take on how a judge would perceive that when you get to an eviction?
Well, number one, they're gonna have to have this. They're gonna have to see this. And
The
so,
judges.
yeah, so that's gonna be good for the landlord that we have this in our system. What, a couple of things that I wanted to, when I look at this, is the nervousness that I've heard when I've talked to a couple of people. The hearing shall be a quasi-judicial hearing. We act as a quasi-judicial board all the time. We do it, yeah.
For the liquor.
Yeah, liquor control, dog situations, the DRB is quasi-judicial. That just means that the person gets to attend and have representation, have witnesses, put on evidence and stuff like that. So we act like that all the time, so that shouldn't make anybody nervous. I thought that when we have the public properties chapter, that a violation of any of this is considered a public nuisance. A violation of any of the registry or any of these chapters should be a public nuisance, not just what we have in 2201, that is on page 103. It should be a violation of section, chapter 7, 2151, the registry stuff, the fire marshal ordinance. Any violation of those two things should be considered a public nuisance. And then we get to move under this public nuisance properties. Remember, this isn't for the one-timer. The one-timer's done as soon as he or she gets a phone, or it gets a phone call from Marty or Dominic or whoever, or Matt. That's done, it's taken care of. This is for the person who's doing this a dozen times, and there's nothing we can do about it. The fire chief, under 2203, the fire chief or fire marshal shall serve as the city's enforcement officer for the public nuisance properties. I would want it so that anybody can report to, not just the fire marshal reporting to the city manager, but a neighboring property can report to the city manager. And I think we've got that covered here. But I would want to make it clear in the statute that a person doesn't have to just say, look, I've just called the city PD and said there's a problem, and then nothing happens from that. That they can call the fire marshal or the city manager or whoever the city manager designates and say, hey, look, this is a violation of Chapter 8, and I think that we should start to take action. Here's what's going on. And then they should make the assessment. That's just a comment I had. Another one I had is, if a mutually agreeable plan or abatement is not agreed to, and the property owner doesn't respond, the enforcement officer may refer the matter. To me, that's a done deal. If the property owner doesn't respond, or they can't come up with an abatement agreement, then they must report it to the city council. That means that there are members of the public out there that are our constituents that are complaining about something and they're not getting any satisfaction. So that means that they either can, that matter that they've reported now has to be reported to us, and then we take some type of affirmative action. Not that we've got 2 or 3 people out there that are saying, oh, well, I don't think that's important enough. If it's not important enough, then how come they didn't come up with a plan? And how come they couldn't come up with a, or the property owner didn't respond? To me, those are 2 very important things in this public nuisance ordinance. If they didn't come up with a plan or they didn't respond, then they're a public nuisance. And I want somebody here saying to the council, we need to start enforcement actions. Because we've had members of the public say, we've got a problem with this property, and nobody's doing anything. And that's not what this is all about. So if they can't come up, I think that language should not be may, it should be, they must refer it to us. If Dominic gets a call and he tries to act on it and the property owner doesn't respond, they can't come up with an abatement hearing, he's got to now come to us and say, this is what's going on. Not that it's his discretion. He's a city manager. We're the city council. We represent the people out there. And they're telling us there's a problem and they're not getting any satisfaction. That comes here before us. That's what this ordinance is all about. And that's not here right now. The last thing is, what I want to say about this is, let me just go by. I think it was just something that I thought of when I first read it. I've had a conversation now, at least a half a dozen conversations with people. And to me, this is not an ordinance that the normal landlord is going to have a problem with. 99% of the people that are renting out there are never going to have to worry about this. 99%. It's the 1% that we all have a problem with. And it's not only the police showing up, giving those a couple of few violations that they have to have. It's, you're not mowing your lawn, you've got, it's trash all over the place, junk cars in there, all kinds of people showing up, being down at the end of the street, yelling over at the patrons at the bar, having a clothing store where you can't have people go in because they're afraid that something's going to happen to them. Those are the types of things that this public nuisance ordinance is all about. And those are all nuisances. And that's why it shouldn't be just a couple of things that Dominic put down in here that said these police officers are showing up and these are the things that they're going to be looking for. It should be any violation of this entire package is a public nuisance. And then that brings those properties into line. And that's what I think the general public wants to see. They want the place cleaned up, and this is the tool that gives us the ability to do it. But it has to be broad enough so that we can take any violation of any one of these ordinances and say, we consider that to be a public nuisance.
What if I own my property and my property is a public nuisance, but I'm the landlord? Is that a whole different?
And you're impacted by the public health and safety ordinance.
PSHO violation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'd be on the list. Okay.
I mean, to Tim's point, I think that the definition gets at it. It's, the list is just in the findings, right? But the definition that puts the property in play for enforcement of this ordinance is 3 or more criminal citations, 3 or more civil violations of the fire protection ordinance, or the public health and safety ordinance. So it is everything that's in here.
It should be everything that's on, all the violations that are in the registry program should be a violation of the public nuisance.
How would that not be a taking? I'm just trying to understand how you would enforce this against a homeowner without violating, their Fourth Amendment rights.
Well, we're not against the homeowner. We're enforcing against a landlord.
But to Trudy's point,
That's a different, that would be.
That's not this.
That's different.
So if you have a bad homeowner versus a landlord.
Right.
So that's what she's getting at. Why would it be just targeting landlords?
Well,
So my question.
You're coming from the perspective of sanctity of private property, right? And we shouldn't be able to go after that, I think, right?
Well, without, I mean,
And you're
I don't know, I'm just
coming
trying to, I'm just trying to envision,
I got some questions.
how do you, I've got a lot of questions too. I'm just trying to envision how that would play out, and ultimate, like, with the abatement options, there's eviction, there's, you know, I could see a fine, but like ultimately the homeowner owns the property, you can't force somebody to sell it.
We're not, nothing in here forces somebody to sell it, so it's not a taking.
What this does is it encourages the landlord to work with us to solve the problem at the property and in the community.
Then you're getting into mediation,
Yeah.
right?
We're
So
really
do you have-
trying to
is there a
solve problems.
I know, so as a professional mediator, you have different tenants and they don't always read the lease. Even if you throw an addendum in there, you think they're gonna pay attention to that little addendum? I got tenants, they sign it and then it's done. I could kick them out for growing marijuana on the property, smoking it in the building and such. They don't pay attention to that stuff. I hear
It's your
stuff,
obligation as a landlord to inform them of that.
yes,
That's right.
on a regular basis. You gotta babysit them, you know, so. Fortunately, I don't live
That's why I don't
right
want to be a landlord.
It's tough. So if you had a single-family home that was a nuisance property compared, if you want to put in that category, drugs and all that stuff happening, why isn't that enforced the same level? But you can't put the level on the landlord. When you throw evictions in this, try to put them out. Try to kick them out of the building right now.
But
Try
do
it.
you think, but you, Tim,
You
you
know?
I do it all the time. I do it all the time.
You know how much it takes?
Yeah.
I know, I had $2,000 waiting down the street on one.
But a landlord that is trying hard to evict a problematic tenant is gonna be received very different in front of this board than a landlord who is doing nothing and all they care about is whether the rent check clears and they don't care where the money comes from.
Right. You're right. But the eviction doesn't solve it, I don't think.
Eviction
I
doesn't
don't
solve
think
it?
eviction solves it. Because he's gonna go to, not to my property, he's gonna go to hers. And do the same thing.
Well,
So how do we teach this public?
No.
It gets a little deeper than just
No,
eviction.
I don't have any sympathy for that, because you're required to do the proper investigation to make sure that you know who's coming into the property.
Oh,
And, you know, Judge Cashman said it the best way. He said to a client of mine that was in there when I was in an eviction action, he looked at him and said, Mr. So-and-so, if you don't like the rules, get out of the business. It's okay for the landlord to sit there and take in $2,000 a month or $100 or $1,700. Look, I see it all the time. I've done it for 25 years. You're not the first one that comes in here that's going to say
You and I have
something.
done some business.
All right? So I know exactly where you're coming from, but it's going to take more than just, I think Dominic, you might have said it a while ago, it's going to take the landlord, it's going to take more than just the landlord receiving money. Now they're going to have to be responsible for the property that he's allowing people to go in and rent from to receive that money. And that's where we're coming from. The normal problems that are occurring in the city of St. Albans aren't coming from SFRs, single-family residences, that have, the owners are occupying the property. They're coming from landlords who are not present or who are not responsible. That's where the majority of our problems are coming from. And this ordinance is to combat that. And if you were here at the meeting several months ago, you'd understand that. I don't know if you were here or not, right?
So, the other thing is, when there's a problem at a property, does the landlord get notified by the police? I should be targeted on that. I shouldn't hear from a neighbor.
Yeah, I
Well,
asked
There
that
should be
question
some
because
sort of,
Here, that sounds very reasonable,
they should be targeted.
logistic-
but here's the thing. There's 700 or so instances a year. That's a pretty significant administrative burden to put on the police department or city hall to say, okay, once a week, we're gonna go through the list of violations and send out a letter. You know, and that really puts us in the property management business. We already do way too much property management for absentee landlords. And within the ordinance, before we do anything, we send them a letter that says, you may be a nuisance property, right? So the first thing that they hear from us isn't, you are a nuisance property, you need to come in and make a plan, or you're gonna get serious fine. You know, there's a head, before that, we have to put them on notice that they're in the ballpark. That's strike one, and I just,
I totally agree with that. I think Tim had made the comment last meeting that most landlords would know when the police visit. And as I shared with Tim, I disagree. If it's an absentee landlord, they may never know about it at this point. So it's a fine line of how you're going to, but to your point, you're going to get that letter up front saying, we think, or a call, we think you might have an issue. Well, why do you say that? Well, we've been there twice in the last month. Oh, I didn't realize that. So that, I can see where that could be the beginning of the conversation.
Could a landlord call the police department and say, can you tell me how many times you've been to this property? Or is that a violation of someone's privacy? One of your tenants?
no, it's public record.
It's not gonna be the way, I know the way you're thinking. But it's gonna be as simple as the landlord coming in saying, okay, or a problem being addressed and the landlord being notified of it, and the landlord saying, oh geez, well, I'm gonna get on that right away, I'm gonna notify this tenant that, you know, they're doing A, B, and C. See you later. Great, we're happy. It's when you come back the fourth time, and we say, hey look, this is now the fourth time that you've done this. A lot of the things that you're worried about, and I know you are, I've heard it, are gonna be resolved very quickly as soon as the landlord comes up and says, look, here's my plan to get rid of this. I might have to put a light up, I might have to put a door lock on this thing, I might have to talk to the tenant, write him a letter, or him or her or it a letter, and that's gonna end it. That's gonna be the end. Okay, great, we're satisfied. Or it won't even come to this level. All right, so.
Can I ask some questions? There's some that I have some questions specifically about the language.
About the what?
The language. And I have a list of just a couple of comments. First of all, I'm speaking on my own behalf. So I just want to put that out there. I'm questioning on my own behalf.
What's your name, by the way?
My name is Linda Coulomb.
Okay.
And you're a landlord, Linda?
No, I'm a property owner, but I occasionally volunteer for Vermont Legal Services. But I'm not in that capacity today. I'm speaking on my own behalf. So I just want to make that very clear. So on page 87, I'm just curious about the uninvited guests. And first of all, I just kind of preface sort of my position and some of my concerns. You all know what I was living next to last year, and I was a very big, advocate for having something done because it was really bad. So generally, I supported this direction. I just have some concerns, mostly regarding civil rights of tenants. So in the uninvited guests, I'm just curious, how could that, if I'm a victim of crime, not just domestic violence, but like stalking or breaking an entry, or stalking can occur again and again and again. And I have no control over that. And so I'm calling the police, or somebody's breaking an entry into my house. I'm really concerned about that definition of uninvited guests, because if they're uninvited, they're uninvited. So how could a tenant be responsible for the activity of somebody that they didn't invite onto their premise?
I don't think the tenant would be responsible. The landlord would be responsible because obviously they're providing an environment where their tenant lives is not safe. For whatever reason, maybe they need better doors, better locks, security.
Okay.
So
I'd be afraid that, so ultimately I'm afraid that a landlord, a bad landlord, or in this climate, you know, where you can get so much for your rent, you've got somebody who's, you know, on a lease for cheaper rent, and you can get a lot more for rent, could use this to kick out, you know, tenants, and it could be used disproportionately to impact negatively women, minorities, and children. And so could a landlord use that term uninvited guest, you know, as part of the abatement procedure to evict that tenant for nefarious purposes?
So would you feel comfortable, because you saw, I'm sure you saw in the ordinance where it said that allegations of domestic, what were they? not domestic violence, but, yeah, it was domestic, I think we did put the word domestic violence in
Yeah,
there.
you put
Were
domestic
not
violence.
considered to be
Yeah.
nuisances under the statute, so, I mean, I can't
I was
say.
happy with that, but I wondered if, rather than carving out exceptions, because there's many other acts of violence that can happen to a person that isn't classified as domestic violence, that is outside of their control. You know, if somebody breaks into my house, or for whatever reason, I've got lots of, computer equipment, and so it's very like enticing for somebody to break in my house, and then they assault me. That's not domestic violence, because it's not a partner.
So
Or
that's-
stalking. Mostly I'm thinking about
So that's
stalking.
very different.
That would
That's
come in
different.
here, that would.
If I may, I think just to get what you're trying to say is, and I think we need to just get this out of public record. If a tenant has been victimized in any way, whether they've been broken into, domestic violence is on here, whatever crime a tenant's been a victim of, it's recurring. Maybe they live, there's an apartment building right next to Holton Street, Holt Park. I was down there and the guy said he's had stuff stolen off his porch, he's been robbed a bunch of times. He calls the police, blah, 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 blah. And I know we're a level-headed board here and we would make the right decision, but we're not gonna be the board forever.
Right.
Is there any protection in this ordinance preventing a landlord to be like, just stop calling the cops because the city's coming down on me, and if you don't, I'm not renewing your lease?
Right.
Well,
I'm going to let me jump on that. So this goes to your initial question about the lady calling for any little noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
I compare this, Marty, in some ways to the public health and safety. If you haven't sat in on a public health and safety meeting, I think are you still doing them weekly, Marty? The amount of common sense that Marty and Matt Mulheron and Chip focus on when it comes to a violation of public health and safety, I think we have to take a leap of faith here and understand that common sense will prevail in most of these cases.
What if you have a board that's composed of people who have no sympathy? There's a lot of people in this community who have very little sympathy against, some of the bad actors.
That's nothing we can regulate.
No, I know, but
That can happen at any time.
if there's not a good law, or if there's, ordinance on the books that can be used by, in a negative way, it could be, you know what I mean, it could be used in a bad way by a board that doesn't have.
Then you and many people like you will come here and make that argument to the council that's here, and it'll get changed.
What if I'm out of town?
Is it-
You know what I mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
I think the
I
individuals.
support what you're doing, because I think that I have called for it myself, something needs to be done. I was one of the, people that was here, really upset. I'm also a domestic violence survivor, and, I had a pretty rough childhood, so I can imagine a scenario where, we could be out on, we could have been out on a year,
My comment is, this isn't gonna be perfect from the get-go.
Sure.
This is something that we will learn from and need to tweak as we go along. But for us to get something out there to begin with, we need a starting point.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your comments, and I think you've given us food for thought, but we can't address every scenario in this, and that's what I'm saying. We need to depend on the fire chief, the police department, Marty, others to utilize common sense in the process.
Can I make one suggestion maybe that might help with my issue, and I don't know if it will, but rather than having an exception, just like the domestic violence and listing out all the exceptions, maybe instead making the list of activities that will trigger this, instead of exceptions to when it won't. Would
That is on the first page.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Properties or police or people.
Well, I guess I'm reading it in kind of different, that's the purpose for it, but when it comes to.
I think I'd much rather have common sense than that, because if we do that, then this, whatever activity that we don't have listed that presents itself to us will then take a long time for us to change the ordinance in order to abate that practice. And so to me, that's worse than saying, I doubt there'll be common sense on the panel or with the enforcement officer as to whether or not my circumstance is a public nuisance.
Tim, is there any way to actually put in there guidance for future councils as far as burden of evidence goes then? Like, this is the type of evidence we expect to be able to support these claims, like a noise ordinance might require a bit more, like, sure evidence versus more arbitrary evidence to support it, and the council can use those guidelines. I'm not sure if it's ever been done or if that's possible, but I know you said here it's on us to provide burden of evidence, but.
Evidence is evidence, no matter what you call it. Arbitrary evidence or, it's all evidence. So, I mean, you have to weight it. It gives it, you have a weight.
The burden is on the city.
Yeah.
The council can give it the weight they think it deserves, which may be nothing.
Sure. And if it's that bad, Eric, it'll get appealed to the court, and the court will just throw it out.
And
that's like the lower court judges. They don't want to have their opinions overturned in the appeals court. So they're going to do things that are going to be confirmed by and most often are going to be confirmed by the appellate level. So they're not going to make those arbitrary, capricious moves because they know they'll get overturned.
And I think that ties a little bit back to what you commented on as well, as far as getting rid of somebody. It's difficult to get rid of a nuisance tenant, where we're trying to also, and I heard this mentioned, provide a tool that you can use if you have to go to court saying it is against the public health and safety ordinance. Here's the ordinance, they've been called regularly, they're a problem to help landlords as well.
So could it potentially save landlords money? Because we know that landlords, they don't like to spend tens of thousands of dollars to evict someone after they've already lost months and months of rent. So could this help expedite that process, would you think? If it's in if it's in our ordinance?
Tim said yes.
Yeah, it should. But remember, we've got a big ordinance here, but it's only going to net in a very small amount of.
The target here isn't the people who are evicting their bad tenants.
Yeah.
Right, it's the ones who just let them continue
People
to
who are
stay and destroy a
harvesting.
neighborhood.
So where do you put that person when you evict them? You know?
Swamp.
So where do you put them? There's no place, so I feel bad for the.
Are you telling me that on your rental applications, you don't have who are the last 5 tenants or where the last 5 places you were at or the last 3 places you were at? And you can't see
They try
from
to
that
diligently do
application?
that, but they put on a good show. So it's one tenant, let's put it this way. I got a one tenant, you see, the only one that applied for this 2-bedroom apartment that had a child in it. They were in the CVOEO program. Yes, I took that person in. I felt bad for that child. How do I get that person out? She hasn't paid in 14 months her portion of the rent. How do I do that? How do I take them out on the street? How do I have a heart? How do I feel bad for that?
Well, I teach a couple of law classes, and I always tell my students what's moral and what's immoral doesn't mean it's illegal or legal, right? Morality and legality is 2 different things, right?
We have a housing problem, right? So throwing eviction into this
I think
really is a problem.
Hi. I have one question and then just a couple thoughts. I'm not necessarily looking for answers on, just something I've been thinking about. I am a landlord, but hopefully I will never have to deal with this. My question is related to your comments. Is there a way to put in some language related to victimization, like what Chad was saying? Because one of the comments I wanted to make is it is actually kind of harder than you'd expect to get an RFP, or an RFA, a relief from abuse order, a restraining order against people. You can't get one unless the person that you're trying to get the restraining order against has repeatedly tried to make contact. I personally tried to get one against someone who had entered my property, but because they hadn't repeatedly done it, the police denied it. So that's one thing that I think about when we're talking about people who might be victims of stalking. Like, stalking doesn't have to necessarily happen on your property. And so it would be really terrible if someone was evicted because there was a problem situation and the person wasn't actually entering that property, but this victim was then, we've been saying the word constantly, just kicked out of their apartment for something that they had no control over, and they can't get an RFA because the police won't grant it. So that's just like something I'm thinking about. The question was, can we put in some sort of language about victimization that's not their fault? Another thought I had was about just, do we have a plan for, I know what properties you're talking about that are the problem properties. I work in the area, I understand, but do we have a thought about when these people potentially do get evicted, where they're going to go, and if that's going to be more of a problem, or are they going to be sleeping in a bench in Taylor Park and then doing the same drugs out there? And my last thought, I'm sorry, when these people are potentially evicted, is it the people who are written onto the lease? Is it everyone who is living in that building? Because there are domestic situations where, I know it's seen as an exception, but say there's drug abuse by one partner in the relationship, but the other person is trying to get their partner out and trying to get them away. If this comes through the city council and it's determined that this is a problem property and these people need to leave because of their activities, is it everyone in that apartment if only part of the people are the problem? Like, is it the people on the lease? Is it the people in the building?
That to me is up to the landlord.
Okay.
Yeah. The landlord could take one, say, hey, this person's great, I want him to be there, and I want the rest of you, 2 or 3 or 4 or 1, to be out of there.
So just get the free.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You could do that now without this. A landlord could do that now, without this ordinance. Start an eviction process.
I just want to make sure it
Depending
doesn't
on how
like
the
kick
lease
out
is.
an entire family if only one part of the family is the problem.
I appreciate your questions and all of your thoughts, because I've had the same thoughts, like, if this goes forward, are we then creating other problems for the city,
Is
right?
Lori's house gonna need an entire other building?
Right, well, we've just got that,
Shelters.
we just got that checked off.
Right, but another
I know, a third building.
But I think that what, my thinking has flipped a little. I'm hopeful that this will give our problem landlords incentive to do better in their properties, vetting their people, taking care of their properties. Because like you said, not every tenant in a multi-unit facility or whatever, apartment, is doing wrong. And other people that are living in that property deserve to be in a building that feels safe and where they can be at ease. So my hope is, I'm hoping that this will help provide incentive for some landlords that we've been trying to work with. And I think the fines, I mean, money talks, right?
I just want to go back to your stalking comment, Linda. That's not a landlord issue. That's that's a police issue.
No, but say you have a tenant that is being stalked.
But the tenant's not doing anything wrong.
The tenant's not doing anything wrong, but the landlord is like, you're the problem.
Right, the
Get
3-day
out.
police call. My concern is that,
A not so nice landlord could say, this is a problem I don't really want to deal
But
with.
no
because
matter
you're
what,
calling
no
on
matter what we
stalking.
pass, landlord can do that anyway.
That's true.
I mean, we can't solve
But
all
they'd
the
be
ills.
more,
But the
they'd be more
landlord,
afraid of,
right, that's the problem.
As of right now, the landlord wants to keep their money coming. But if you have a tenant that keeps calling the cops for a legitimate reason, they're being victimized, and I know we have domestic in this, I mean, I'm just,
There's just more ways to victimize somebody than.
and we say, hey, Joe Smo, we're having the same call in this unit, you've exceeded it, now you might be a nuisance property.
But I think that's where common sense comes into play. We're getting calls because the tenant is being stalked and the tenant's making the calls. Matt or whoever is gonna say, look, this is not a nuisance situation, this is a public safety situation, and it's based on the safety of the individual. And I get that the landlord may say, look, I'm tired of this and you're out.
Yeah.
But that can happen today, it can happen tomorrow.
I just worry that this process might make them more fearful to keep a tenant like that, but I guess that's like kind of the nature of it, and there's nothing you can really do about that. And that the benefits, hopefully, of this program will outweigh that potential.
There's a lot of talk of eviction. Under this ordinance, eviction is one of the last resorts being presented. And eviction, I mean, landlords are typically going to want to avoid eviction unless it's an extreme case. So it's going to be avoided as much as it can in the abatement situation. This ordinance could be used just as easily to make a building more secure for someone who's been suffering from stalking or other forms of victimization, and raise that to the level where the landlord will try that first before they try to evict, because evicting's hard. This ordinance is about making landlords seriously consider all of their options, one of which is eviction, and not allowing them to just ignore it.
Marty, I want to go to you for a second. Marty is well engaged in the public health and safety, engaged with property owners, with issues that have arisen. Can you give me a rough estimate of how many you come to resolution with on these issues?
95% of it.
And that's, I think that's
It's working with them, coming up with a solution, facilitating that. We help them, you know, if they need.
And that's not just landlords, folks, that's homeowners, that's other
Right.
property owners. I think that's our expectation, is when we send these notices out, we're gonna come to a solution, or the chief will, Matt will come to a solution that will be rectified in short order. To go through this whole process, just like Marty goes through a whole process with the public health and safety, it's very rare. Most people do step up to the plate and resolve the issue. And I think that's where, and if it isn't the case, then we come back and we tweak it. But
A lot of
we have to
times,
start someplace.
the landlord doesn't realize the problem that's happening. We notify them, they notify the tenant, and it's taken care of.
That's that communication piece that you were
Right.
talking about. Yeah, but that's a process.
I just have one more comment, and it's just us, I might have misread this, and I didn't write down the spot, sorry. But in one section of the ordinance, it says that a hearing would be scheduled within 10 days from the fire marshal? Making a recommendation, but that the landlord and tenant is required to receive a 14 days advance notice, and I just wondered if that conflicts.
Okay.
Yeah, I can write the dates down.
Was it 10 days for a meeting with the landlord?
You get the notice.
Yeah, those
and
are two
then-
different steps.
And then the 10 days.
They were, okay,
Those are two different steps.
okay,
The first step, if you get notice that you're potentially a nuisance, you get 10 days to get with the city and let's try to prevent this whole thing.
Okay.
If it comes to us, you have a 14-day window where we schedule it.
okay.
So there are different steps along the way.
It's hard to, I didn't print it, so it's hard to read it.
We're gonna get ready to move on. Does anyone have any, Michael, you have a comment?
Yes, I have one comment. When we talk about landlords, one problem in the city here is down on the corner of Lake and Catherine Street. That apartment complex there, it's a drugstore, it's, the police are down there constantly. And the other place in the city is the Cadillac Motel. Police are there constantly, 3 to 4 times a week.
Well, this
So we'll take the guy that owns that property. He owns several properties. He's got one on, a couple on Federal Street, he's got a couple on Lake Street, he's got furniture stores there now. I mean, the police are down there. Sometimes you got 2 to 3 cruisers down there at a time.
And that's what we hope to
Why we're
address
here.
with this ordinance.
But no, Mike, that corner building on Lake and Catherine is also rented by the hospital too. And so, I mean, it's not, the entire building is a residential complex. Can I just say one more thing, Tim? I just want to make sure that this isn't taken in a way where it's going to be World War III. It's taken in a way where it says, if you landlord are not watching your property, or you're so reckless that you don't know what's going on with your property or paying attention to what's going on with your tenants, we're going to step in. And that's what it's all about. It's like adverse possession. And the court says you can take someone's property if they haven't paid attention to it for 15 years and you've been keeping it up and doing all the things like it's your property. Because the state of Vermont says if you don't care about your property for 15 years, then you don't deserve to have it. So what we're trying to say is to the landlords, if you don't care what's going on in your property and all you're doing is collecting money, and you don't care what harm it's bringing to the community, we're gonna get involved. And that's what this is supposed to be about.
Most neighborhoods have, we can all think of one or two in the neighborhood that is an issue.
Yeah. For the record, I think that the intentions of this board is good with this. I don't think that anybody's trying to do harm. I mean, I'm thinking about the scenarios in which harm could be done.
I think we need to also protect the landlord, you know, the good landlords, the guys that are doing their job and stuff.
They'll never be harmed by this. Jim Levy called me as soon as this came out. Once I explained it to him, he said, I'm all for it.
Right? Good stuff.
Eric, comment?
So my only other comment is, and I know we're gonna monitor this closely anyways, 1 year from now, to be able to see a report out of the number of, approaches that the public health safety officer has done and how they were remediated and what the response was to the community, and then we can evaluate how we might need to shift things.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true.
All right,
Thanks
thank you
for
folks for
being here,
coming in,
guys.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay, we're at a second reading here. Are you gonna make some changes and bring it back to a third time, or? There was a couple things that I brought up that I thought needed to be changed. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
I encourage you to consider approving it, make those changes and approve it as amended. And there's two that have been proposed. I propose that we add possession of stolen property to section 2200. And Tim, you've suggested that 2203 be changed to enforcement officer must refer.
Yeah, it's 2201 for years.
Yeah, this only thing
Did I
is
say
because
this?
I went to a speech that day.
2203, that's fine.
Yeah, because I read
For the other one,
before.
2201 is the one that's
Yeah.
about possession of stolen property.
Oh, yeah. And just to make sure, you think that the language was good enough in here to make the entire violation of any of these ordinances as a violation of the ordinances. And I'll be okay with that. I'm okay with
So
that.
Title 7 is
I'm
the
not
fire
in the
protection and
town, so
prevention.
I
Yeah.
dotted line.
And this says city's fire protection and prevention.
Okay.
Everything in here,
It's Title 7.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
I mean, it's a small bar.
All under domestic violence.
Maybe,
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, probably is.
I just said, would stalking fall under domestic violence? Because we wanted to really make sure that people would continue to,
I think it would be.
so I mean, I see it that way, but I didn't know, just given the conversations, if that's something.
We could say that domestic violence to include, but not limited to, the following: stalking, blah, 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 a couple of things that
Yeah,
Sharon brought
I
up.
think so.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm worried about an expansive definition there.
Mhm.
Because that limits us.
People that buy, sell, and use drugs. Drugs and sex go together. Drugs and violence goes together. And drugs produces a lot of victims. And so, pretty soon, everybody that we're trying, all the behavior that we're trying to address is exempt.
I'll make a motion to adopt the public nuisance properties ordinance with the amendments that we talked about tonight.
I will second that.
I have a motion from Tim, seconded by Trudy. Any further comments or questions from the council? We've exhausted the public discussion, so I will take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for your work on that, Tim, Trudy, and Marie. Thank you for your work, Donald. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
We're moving on to item number 10, which is consider redevelopment assistance funds for Project Vermont, which we had a presentation at our last meeting on, which is also known as outer development.
That's it in a nutshell. We're suggesting that we use $10,600 for rental assistance and $4,000 for the cost of a new sign from JD Designs or some similar sign
Motion to approve.
Hold on, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Chad. The 10,000 was a total one, right?
Yeah.
Not,
Not
And
10,000.
not
And
10, not 10 plus the 4.
Six and
Six
10.
for rental, four, so.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
And hours of operation, that's all in there.
That's all in the proposal, and that'll be part of the agreement.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the timeline for the budget, item number 11.
There's a short little proposed timeline. And basically, when we get back from Christmas, the week of January 6th, we meet with the Finance Committee. Budget presentation will come on the 13th, the regular council meeting. And then we use the following Mondays as needed to finalize the budget.
I'm out January 6th to January 13th.
Okay.
I can attend by Zoom.
Okay, let me do that.
Yep, okay.
I mean, maybe it will be done before then, but that's,
Yeah, if we can do it before then, I'm ready.
okay.
We have a joint police meeting
JPB meeting is Wednesday.
I can't do that
this week, right?
one. Anniversary.
Wednesday's your anniversary?
Good choice.
Anniversary of what?
Good choice.
Marriage.
That's why I said good choice.
So we don't need any action there, that's just how we do it.
Okay.
Let's move on to item number 12, consider a motion to direct utilization of ARPA fund balance. And we have a young lady waiting in the back of the room patiently. Should we discuss
Sean, the
this?
meeting started.
What's that?
Sarah, how are you today?
I'm excellent, how are you?
Good, thank you. You will discuss the utilization of ARPA fund balance, which is, do we know what our fund balance is?
We sure do. It is $108,558.54 precisely. So if you recall, a number of years ago, the city received a lump of money from the U.S. Treasury, just over $2 million in ARPA funding, which was to assist in pandemic recovery. The city has utilized those funds almost exclusively in economic development, and the timeline to obligate the money is quickly coming to a close. So we have to have these funds all obligated by December 31st, 2024, which is in just a few weeks, and then subsequently spent by December 31st, 2026. Treasury is very specific about what it means to obligate funds. Funds are obligated when contracts are signed or agreements are entered into to spend money. A budgetary appropriation does not count, so we could not say, oh, well, in FY26, we're going to tuck these monies in to help the general fund, but we can use them for any expense that a government might incur, such as personnel costs. So one of the very common uses of ARPA funds in Vermont specifically is to pull in some of the revenue to offset costs in the general fund, which I'm proposing we do with the $108,558.54 that we have not yet obligated. And that would help the general fund this year, and it would free up some tax dollars, and we would be able to, we would have flexibility about with what we would do with those tax dollars in the future if a need should arise. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't feel great about that.
I know that it feels like supplanting. There was actually an article from like Cornell Law, and it was like, ARPA allows you to supplant, and then 2 weeks later they changed the headline because it was a little bit inflammatory, but this is a specific use that is authorized in the Treasury final rule and is recommended by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and is implemented in other communities.
A lot of this money is some of the money we've been using to help businesses, like the
Like
one
we just did.
that we just approved.
That's correct.
So,
Here's what Sarah's not saying. You can keep doing that, right? So we're not saying we're going to take all this into the general fund and use it for the general fund purposes. If the general fund continues to be on track towards positive fund balance, then the 108 that comes in frees up 108 that can be used to continue those existing purposes.
just after the deadline. The challenge is the deadline, right, which is the end of this month.
We're just trying to preserve our flexibility to keep our program going without having to go out and sign a bunch of, you know,
But what if it's needed to cover personnel costs, then we don't have any more money for a new business that needs help with their
So you do have a return on some of the investment, so.
yeah, I mean, some of the hotel money's coming back, the redevelopment fund is getting replenished, you know, Sarah and I are working hard to build that up. You know, to continue, well, you know, art was beginning to go away, we want to continue to keep doing this. We see how important it is.
Why can't we just put it in the redevelopment fund?
Because there's a specific prohibition on transferring it into a reserve. You also can't transfer it into your pension fund. But you can supplant property tax dollars.
Yeah, I don't know the exact context, but Milton have to do the same thing with ESSER at the end of it.
This is what most communities have done.
Yeah.
So we have to have a redevelopment earmark, somebody coming in, like our last item, or we can't use that. We
You
can't
have to
put
go
that.
out on Main Street and say,
Anybody
Who needs
need
money?
help?
Who needs money?
They'd be all like, I
Between now and the next meeting.
And that, no, before then, and it would have to be signed prior to December 31st.
do. Okay, so the timing is an issue.
So we don't have a choice.
That's correct.
I mean, it feels weird.
I know it feels weird.
I'm very hopeful though that we can then take that money
It's new
and put
math.
it.
Think of it as new math.
Oh no, I teach new math, this is not new math.
but this conversation is really helpful, that, you know, what I'm hearing is the council, assuming that the general fund doesn't need it, would like to continue the existing program and wants to continue using it and having that option.
Within reason.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do.
So you need a motion from us,
Yes, please.
Sarah? Entertain a motion to allocate the funds as suggested,
I'll motion.
or return them. What's your choice?
Motion to allocate them as suggested.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Eric, seconded by Chad. Any other questions for Sarah on this? Sarah, thank you for your.
Are we gonna vote?
We will. You want to do a roll call? Sarah, thanks for your thorough explanation on that. So all those in favor to the allocation, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Now we'll move on to Eric, who has a request or a proposal.
So originally, and actually background on this, I've received 5 different constituents asking about a 4-way stop at Ferris and Lincoln Street. Currently, from what I've observed, much of the Ferris Street traffic almost comes to a stop because there's traffic that often kind of slowly goes through the stop sign without stop on Lincoln. So currently, North and South Lincoln have a stop sign. Ferris has no stop sign. I did do some research before this meeting, and according to our ordinances in Chapter 3, Section 5165, we actually do have Lincoln and Ferris in there twice. Once as single stops for North and South as it is now, and second in the 4-way stop section as number 13 as Lincoln Avenue and Ferris Street. So we have it both ways. I mean, if anything, an ordinance change would be removing whichever one we don't want to have, and I would encourage us to keep the 4-way. In the meantime, we could ask that the 4-way get put back in, because there's no need to change the ordinance for that.
Has public safety made up any kind of decision?
Yeah, this has a,
No.
Yeah, we brought it up a couple of years ago
This
with
has
buses.
Having traveled that certain times of the day, I would support the 4-way. There's been a few close calls, but that's only me.
I'm okay with it. I just think it's for the school too, you know, the kids, you know.
I think a lot of people traveling on Lincoln expect it to be a 4-way, and it's not. So that's where the issue arises.
I'm okay with it.
I would say 3 times in the last month, I've gone through, like, without my stop sign as I should, and the car almost came out. So.
Yeah. The lower part or the upper? What?
This is Lincoln and
Ferris, yeah.
No, I'm coming out from the upper side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if we approve this, Chip, we turn it over to you.
Marty?
Turn it over to Marty.
So
Sounds like it's just a matter of putting signs up, if it's
Yeah.
already in the ordinance.
Right.
You have to let people know, you like do some flashers, so it's like,
My-
hey.
My sign put upper is broken, Marty's is the only one that works.
That's a good question, though. I have seen other more major intersections that have like traffic change ahead, but we don't have to do that on that side streets, right?
I mean, we can put some warning signs out because they're new stop signs.
I think it's good to know.
It might be also worthwhile reaching out to the school districts and all the buses, use that route to let their bus drivers remind them that's there.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, right? We don't have a second.
Well, since it's in the ordinance, is it just a request or is it a motion to have them put in? How does that work?
Not down for discussion and vote, so.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at some point, and you have to take the other one out, the
That's
two
how we're
way.
gonna chip.
It's not, it's not broken, it's just redundant right now. I mean, we could, next time we go in there, we'll clean out the mention of just the two-way stop.
That's what I was saying.
Okay. All right, thank you, Eric, for that. Moving on to 14, we have a request for water and sewer allocation for proposed coffee house on Franklin Park West. It's on the, it's across from People's Trust on Franklin Park West.
Oh, so you go into people's trust in that?
That we are
Yeah,
right.
right in the corner.
Oh,
Oh. A few.
huh. What kind of coffee? I don't drink
I
coffee,
think
but
Very expensive.
like Starbucks
It's gonna be
expensive
buildings
or?
like-
I think
Funny
they
you
have,
mention that.
they have like a mermaid, there's
I'm not
a,
saying anything, I don't know anything.
You
I think that their logo has a female with long flowing hair or something, I don't know.
We're good at Starbucks.
Who said that? Who, we never said that.
Okay.
Oh,
We're going up in the world, St. Albans.
Yeah.
Coffee house.
It's a coffee house, is all we know.
I know nothing.
Okay, no, nothing. Schultz.
Motion to approve the allocation.
Second.
Motion second, any other questions, other than already posed, that we don't have an answer to?
Right across the street from Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Motion second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Now we'll move on to 15, consider approval of water and sewer allocation for Richard Cummings project.
In Swanton?
Yeah, that's up on Route 105.
So this is an extension of the line from V-Trans going out towards the Bushy Road, towards a development that he already has. He'll extend our water line according to our specs.
Jerry Mill Lane and Gamache.
Yeah.
But it's not Swanton.
Yeah.
Marty, this is.
No, it's-
Well, it's Swanton, but we have the water.
Right, and it's across from Mother Hubbard's.
Mother Hubbard, yeah, there you go.
Oh,
It's
okay.
over the St. Albans,
207, I meant 207.
over the St. Albans town line into Swan.
Sewer is not up there.
No, this is just water.
So I would just point out that the agenda said approval
Yeah.
of water and sewer.
No, it should be just water.
Cross off your sewer. Can I ask you, Marty, how did water get there?
Well, we run water all the way out to Handy Chevy now.
Right.
And then when V-Trans built their new facility, they extended the water from the interstate access road down up 207 and then into their facility. And then Richard will hook on tap there and continue it north.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but we were never presented in request for allocation for water for the state garage, were we?
Yeah.
We were?
Yeah.
Must have missed that one. So then that opens it up. Do we have the pressure enough to then extend out further? If need be?
Possibly, but they may have to put a pump station in if Swanton wanted to continue it further at their expense. But right now, we have enough pressure to feed this project.
Motion to approve the water allocation for Lydia's Ridge.
I'll second.
Motion second, any further questions? Marty, any comments?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. We're moving on to board appointments. We have 2 for development, 1 for belonging, equity, and inclusion, 1 for parks and rec. So let's start with those who did the interviews for development review for Rebecca Piper and Becky Mannion. Or did they all?
Those are pre-existing folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are pre-existing folks, so.
Okay, so.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve Rebecca and Becky for DRB positions. Rebecca expiring in 12/31/27, and the same thing with Becky.
And Becky will remain as an alternate?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so we have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Marie for appointment of Rebecca and Becky to the DRD board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Rebecca and Becky are both appointed for another term.
And since Preston is also a returning member for BEI, I'll make a motion to approve Preston with a term expiring December 31/27.
And I'll second that.
Motion and a second to reappoint Preston to the BEI committee. Any questions, any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. And then the last one is Paula Minich.
Minch.
Minch. That's you.
Minch.
Thank you, Paula. I'm sorry to make you sit through all this.
That's okay, I just got to be at Costco at 6 a.m., that's all right.
So,
I'm pretty impressed by this. You do a lot up there, and I
We
didn't know
do.
about it until I read it, and I'm very glad you do that stuff.
We do a lot up at the dog park, and there's a very large group of us, myself included, that take great pride in our park. And you know, like, I don't know if you've driven by now that it's dark, we've put up twinkle lights. So there's a bunch of twinkle lights up in our park. We did it last year as well. We've planted trees almost every year that I've had my dog for the last 4 years, trying to get the trees back after, you know, we had a third of our park taken away with a road. So yeah, we really take pride in the dog park. It's a place where there's, you know, many people that come, and it is their favorite place in St. Albans. I mean, I know it doesn't generate you guys a lot of money, tax-wise, because obviously we don't pay to go there, but there are people that come from Alberg and Milton and all around because we have a really nice dog park. And we're very appreciative of the water that we got. You know, we got gravel delivered, and we put gravel down instead of wood chips, which are dangerous for our dogs. And we're more than happy to do the hard work with that. So I'm, you know, here to try and represent the dog park the best I can for everybody, not just myself.
And this began with a tour that I took up there with Melissa Yule around the fence.
Yes.
So the city government had a great idea.
I did email Chad, and I do live in Chad's ward, and I asked if, because Melissa asked me if I would come, and so he said, I don't think you need to, and so I didn't, but then this all came about, and we kind of took a vote in the park, and I was the one that applied.
I love that. So you suggested that this could potentially become a part of the rec budget to help with the fence.
Yeah. Well, I suggested that the rec commission be expanded to have a dog delegate, canine delegate, right?
Yep.
And so.
And I did mean
Not an actual canine, but a person representing the canine park.
Paula, just as far as, we got a lot of compliments, not that it was us, but people noticed the lights last year, and we heard comments here. And the trees that have been planted, you know, I think Jim
did do a lot.
And chose the trees that grow fast, and you can really see that they have grown
But we've also,
significantly.
there's some of us that have bought like maples that have grown really fast. It wasn't just Jim, but
No,
yes,
no.
Jim was a big help in that.
But the selection of the trees, no matter who did it, they've
Yeah.
chosen the ones that do grow.
Yes, so we do have like a maple tree that's almost like 15 feet tall right now. That gives us a lot of shade, especially for the dogs and things, but, yes. I think he planted some other ones that are kind of bushy, but they give us quite a bit of shade as well. Give the dogs some respite out of the sun in the winter, in the summertime. So it has been nice, yeah. And someone delivered some really nice benches that we use all the time, so that was really nice. And I bought a picnic table, so we have a picnic table in there as well, so.
I will make a motion to appoint Paula to the Rex and Dog Park representative.
Second. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Motion by Trudy, second by Eric. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Thank you, Paula. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Get to work.
I don't know what to do, but.
Just do what they tell you up there.
Well, we all are very good at talking to each other and deciding what to do. We bought a pool. I don't know if you guys saw the pool this year. So we had tried several different pools and they were just getting destroyed. I mean, we do have, I don't know if anyone's ever seen Sparrow, but he is a ginormous Malamute. And he tends to rip right through plastic. So we went up to the creamery here, and I did, and we did a collective, money, and I purchased the pool, and people just paid me when they could, and so now we have like a kind of like a, I guess it's kind of like a pig trough or whatever, but it's nice and big, and it's something for the dogs to cool off on, and we're just trying to be really respectful of the water situation, but it's been really nice. I mean, it is my favorite part of St. Albans, I've got to say.
Outside of the council? Maybe you forgot that. All right, so we're moving on to item number 17, which is the mayor's report. No,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Paul. Quickly, Marty, great job on the recent storms, sidewalks clean, streets clean, really. I won't give the full credit, we'll see how tonight turns out, but what you've done so far in the crew. So thank you for that.
No problem. Anybody wants to jump in the plow off the meeting, let me know.
And then a big thank you to Harley and with the downtown group and what they did for Festival of Trees. I attended a few events. The park was packed for the Hallmark in the Park. I think they turned the corner on they didn't do the gala this year, but they did do the casino night, which had about 130 people, and I think the word will get out. It was a good time. And they did a nice job with that. So thanks to Arlie and her volunteers on that as well. I think the city looks great. We mentioned first response. About man hours and time they put into that, so that looks great. It's just hope everyone downtown has a good and prosperous holiday season. So let's start. Eric, go ahead.
Couple things. Just want to reemphasize the people as we go in winter season to be more cognizant of pedestrians and other drivers. And it was snowy the other day, but I was crossing Main Street and waited about 2 minutes for all the cars to find. Someone was actually noticed me stop. I'm standing there and I had like a red jacket on, so not what I was wearing tonight. But anyways, just awareness. I was curious if we've had any more discussions about like the city newsletter, get some liquid information out that we're working on. Maybe after the new year.
Who will handle that? Who will do the newsletter?
Sarah and Kristen.
If you are sorry, you can walk it back.
I'll help you. I'm going to work with you on it. And Marty, I had a quick question. We have those nice new sidewalks, all set relatively new on Ferris. How much damage does pickup plow trucks going over them directly do? Does it a lot? I wasn't sure. Because we got a couple of years ago, the landlords are pounding them hard.
You mean when they do their driveway?
they do the front of the house too, like not just the driveways, they're like plowing it all the way across their backyard, it looks like crap, but not much we can do with that, I was thinking the sidewalks concerns. Does the public health and safety have a plan to talk about the sidewalk plan you brought up last month too, crosswalks? Like as far as what we could do when spring hits?
In terms of lighting.
Lighting, marking the posts in the middle, like we have them up on Federal Street, any of it.
We can talk about that, you know, a lot of it, I think it was comes out of the budget discussion.
Yeah, I'm thinking those lights are insanely expensive, and the state is reluctant because the heating not as bad because some people start not using them, so I get that. I was thinking about other options. The last thing
My advice there is to pick one location, not try to, you know, Public Works does the best they can with getting them painted, you know, but, you know, pick your most problem area and figure out how to improve that one area.
Okay. Well, I know from people. And the last thing I had was we confirmed our winter block party, and anyone in the city's invited. It's January 18th, and I'm being ambitious. So I'm gonna put on my thick clothes and be out there from 1 to 3 at Johnson Park there, Johnson Everett Park, Johnson Park, that's what it's called, behind Barlow Street School. We're gonna have a couple fire pits going. We're gonna have hot cocoa games, paint the snow with food coloring, tons of stuff for kids to do, and encouraging people to bring some warm clothes and a seat and come up and hang out and enjoy some music. Not live. I'm gonna find a musician that wanted to play guitar in that weather, but hopefully we'll have snow. Even if we don't, we'll still plan on having some festivities. So, thanks.
I know you're probably not conflicting, but do we have a date on the winter carnival?
February 12th, I think. Lee's involved in this planning. We try to avoid that date altogether.
Okay. You're set? Judy?
The park and ride finally got the trash picked up. I was so excited. No. Sean Atkins from the town got in touch with the Department of Transportation, and they finally came and took the barrels of trash that had been left there. So it's looking a little bit better. Hopefully they monitor it on an ongoing basis, but we'll see. The property on Bank Street that we approved for the one that burnt, there's still just a huge gaping hole there with very little fence around it. Is that any liability for us as a city?
More families across the county.
Okay, because the fence around it is very sparse, to say the least. Okay. And last meeting, we talked about Duffy's trailing their garbage juice all over the streets because their trucks weren't sealed properly. Did anyone ever?
We haven't had a chance to connect with Duffy's yet.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Productivity as a city tends to plummet right around deer season.
I can appreciate that.
I should bounce off that real quick. I did see this morning, I was out there at 6 o'clock and Casello's trucking through town picking up garbage. I'm not sure if that's.
They pick up items.
Yeah, this has been an ongoing battle with the garbage company since I've been on the council. And my last question was, you mentioned a city newsletter, but I'm wondering, is that redundant to your mayor's newsletter? Because when you send out the water bills, I feel like you highlight a lot of the same things that we do as a city.
I
know you did, but I'm wondering if what you're asking for is redundant of what Tim does.
I don't think so.
Trying, Sarah.
I appreciate it. You're getting gold stars right here. Right.
Thank you.
I think the newsletter is more about your water bill to do, your taxes are coming up, remember to vote. I mean, there's so much more. I mean, I could go on for pages online, and I've touched more on the community stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is so much more that could be done in a email newsletter. And I would say that I get compliments all the time, and people appreciate it. And not everyone gets, and part of it is because it's hard copy. But I think there's so much more that could be done. Sorry, Sarah.
There's the kids at City School are putting out, I think they have over 500 wreaths for the veterans that they're going to be doing soon.
Yes, thank you for that. So that's
Wreath-
Friday.
Wreaths across America, yeah.
There's a ceremony in the park at 10 o'clock
Yeah.
on Friday.
But John said that the number of wreaths that people signed up for, like, jumped greatly. So, yeah.
That's nice.
Tim?
Shopping center, parking lot, Marty, the, time to give those guys a call.
What's the issue?
The poles, coming
Bollard?
off. Yep, coming off the bollards. Actually, I saw a couple of kids walking away with one, so they might be missing one. And that's it, other than the fact that longtime bar owner in the city of St. Albans, J.W. Ryans, and teacher at BFA, they keep her died recently, and so condolences to that family.
Funeral is Friday at 11.
Yeah, and Elks Club is having something.
Celebration of life is after that, the also.
Yeah.
Just to elaborate, I mean, Dick impacted a lot of folks.
Certainly did.
People used to say that he was the best math teacher at BFA that they've had.
Football coach, too.
Football coach.
See, our math scores has gone down since then. Testament to his math.
I couldn't get into his class. But no, he was a great teacher, a great coach, and you know, he was definitely someone that I was related to, and he'll be missed for sure.
He was my boss in front for a long time. It's gonna be a tough one.
Chad, what?
I really just have one question. Do we have an animal control officer?
Yeah. We just have restructured a position in the PD to do more of it.
I just have, there's a problem, dog in my ward, doing that, can you tell me who it is? And you can email it to me or whatever.
Yeah, Steve Bracy is, who's around more, he's kind of
I know
the,
Steve Bracy.
and then Jim Benson backs Steve up. Jim is kind of our relocation specialist, K-9 relocation specialist.
Cool. I'll get in touch with him. That's it.
All's quiet on my street and in our ward, and pretty quiet, so not good. But I do wanna just jump on the fact that the tree lighting in the park was gorgeous. The park was wonderful. I like what they did on the little trees with the white and the red lights. And I had company from out of town for that event. And they just marveled at the community spirit that St. Albans has. And I especially like the snow globe that they had. I thought that was a really cool addition. So that's all I've got to say.
And a neighbor was upset at the snow globe. They waited 45 minutes for his kids to go in because they adamantly did not want to go home. They wanted to go on the subway.
I know, the line was enormous.
We're going to need more next year.
Yeah, yeah, so good job.
Yeah.
And you can all thank Marie and I for the cookies. You worked hard on those.
Yeah, we worked all night.
You gonna eat yours?
Just keep the camera copy eating him the whole meeting.
Yeah.
It was really good.
I want to know why Chad had 3.
Yeah, no kidding. Easy.
One for the baby and
Well, I
one
found that out, but it bugged me a little.
Did I see you eat the baby's cookies?
I don't know whose it was, it was
I have a
gone.
baby at home.
I do have one for Marty and Sarah too.
No, anything to share?
Well, Marty, your men are doing a good job.
Thank you.
Always.
And everything looks good. The only thing is, Marie, keep the noise down at night when we're south of the
Well, I would extend a compliment to your neighbor. They've done a wonderful job on the Hogan house.
Yeah, a lot better than it was when the first one, the second one blew there with the turkeys and all the damn crap.
Tell us how you really feel.
Think how fertile they made the land. Think how fertile.
You all your set?
they made the land.
Yeah, I know.
You all set?
I'm all set.
Motion to approve,
Lay it up there.
I just want to thank Jess for the website work, or Sarah, sorry, brain fart. Tired, sorry. Sarah for the website work. I do love the new calendar tool, if anyone's checked it out. That's Chip, but it's still a cool tool. You can get in there and see the meeting and see the minutes right there, everything's right there, it's helpful. Sarah was pivotal in making sure the rest of the website got together. And it's
I have to share the credit.
giving it to you. I'm just kidding.
Right, consider
We're good, Jim.
approval minutes.
Motion to approve minutes, 11/18/24.
Second.
I have a question on the minutes.
One quick question.
On number 8, or G, I'm sorry, we had brought up discussion about the smoke shop in downtown, and Chip was gonna get us a little more, we had some concerns about that, so Chip was gonna get us, dive a little more into that situation and get us a little more information.
That was the conversation where, Good Stuff, we allocated the ability to have that type of operation to the industrial area. And we're wondering why the smoke shop's on Main Street, and we were gonna take a look at it.
Right now in the zoning, the definition of adult business is limited only to stripping, not to retail sales of items. And that's the use that's relegated to the,
Okay, now, who
service
brought up
level.
adult stripping? I was talking about the smoke shop.
Yeah, right. You were talking about adult businesses,
Okay,
and we have no distinction for retail sales of items.
okay.
So, I've never been into, Good Stuff must sell things that the smoke shop doesn't, correct?
I guess an adult,
No.
yeah,
Okay.
adult movies, adult toys, adult, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Not that I've been in there, I used to represent the owner of it, right?
I didn't know this.
What did I forget out? All right, so,
Okay, so
We
that's,
didn't love it. We just didn't love it that it's so close to the school, but we don't have any control over it, sounds like.
So were you gonna get back to us on that, or?
Are you saying you want to enact a rule that restricts smoke shops to certain parts of the city? Because we can look into doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all upset. Well, I mean, I'm not upset with someone trying to run a business, I just didn't think that was the right place for it.
And
Yeah, we would
kids at the
have
high
to
school
create, we
have-
would have to create a definition that specifically identifies that kind of store and treats them differently from other retail uses.
Like if it was a cannabis store, would they? could
Well,
they
that's a
also-
whole other thing. You'd first have to get the voters to approve cannabis sales.
that's not,
Okay.
Yeah,
that's not,
but yeah,
couldn't
we
be
would,
done now.
Because
Okay.
it'd have to be very specific, right? Because they sell cigarettes at the beverage place down there, right? On South Main.
right.
So if you're talking Smith, and that still would fall in that zone, I think. It's just downtown only,
Certain distance away.
maybe. I had just an edit on 12C. I was saying citywide, not just Ward 5, as far as the reckless driving goes, but that's minor.
Okay, two corrections.
everywhere.
All those in favor, accepting the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved.
Motion to approve warrants, 11/30/24.
Second.
Motion is second by Trudy. All those in favor, any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Warrants are approved, and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to sanction the mayor for too long a meeting.
There's always
I'm
another-
trying to figure out who to blame that on.
Sage.
I was
Motion to adjourn.